lost Wi-Fi according to the live stream, and right now it looks like it's going to lag. I'm seeing the connection roll out here. So anyway, what I was talking about is that Ashley Kavanaugh, the daughter of Debbie Gaddy, there. They're talking about back in Marshall, Missouri, about problems with Wi-Fi. So typically in town, I would take the service contract, and call over to Legal Shield, which my law firm provider is in St. Louis, Missouri, DuBell Judge, and I would have sent over a copy of the service contract, and then determine for a paid service, contracted service like that, how much they can have those problems, and if they're addressing those within a reasonable amount of time, given the fact that the school kids are, and university students are going remote learning online. So it's really critical to have that Wi-Fi service. So I just lost Wi-Fi connection here. So, but that's Legal Shield for me. Is I'm paying $17 a month. I don't pay more because I'm not using the service for like ID theft, insurance kind of thing like that. They've got other service, but I just get the basic Legal Shield. And now it's operating in the UK, the United Kingdom. So I've got friends that are on my Facebook posting, and we exchange comments now and then, conversation now and then, from Ireland, and I believe other places in the UK. I've got the person that I took a professional I Ching divination course from. There is such a thing, and I worked at that every single day for for a full year to finish that course and to really practice it. Hillary Barrett is also in the United Kingdom. Brian Burns is, I believe, in Ireland. While Ken, I'm not sure if Ken is just from England or what. I've got a good friend that was in Wales that I actually spent time with. Another Brian. Brian did business in Russia, Ukraine, and in fact, he spent his birthday down in South Africa on the race car track. He got to race cars just for fun for his birthday. So I spent time with him over at the Irish pub, which is actually operated by or managed by a guy from Scotland at the time. So I got friends in the UK that two of which are still active here on Facebook. And so Hillary Barrett's somebody I took the I Ching divination course from the whole year, as I mentioned. So now it's operating in the United Kingdom. That's why I mentioned that, because I really do have several friends in the UK, some of which are probably going to see this video. So Legal Shield for me is $17 a month. One of the most common things that we can do is take a service contract like that, put it over to them in a fax or an email, and they'll review the document and then give legal counsel and legal consults on the document or on the situation and how that document may apply, especially in terms of a product or service contract. So if the people in Marshall, Missouri, like Ashley and the others that were posting under her post, if they're not getting adequate service with the Wi-Fi within the terms of that contract, I'm not a lawyer, I don't give legal advice, I don't practice law, but they can use that situation to keep things equal and fair, especially given the fact that they're paying for that service, for that Wi-Fi, and especially in the fact that it is a crisis situation and an absolute necessity, because the state has put an order out that the school children and the university students are studying remotely, and therefore, as part of that package, for that to work, the internet has to work. So they have to be doing their part, and that's one way to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that, and keeping up with timely service and any technical issues addressed and solved within a timely manner. So that's just a friendly suggestion. If I was there, that's how I'd be handling it. Again, though, for the friends in the United Kingdom, that service is really, really great. When I was in Canada, I had an issue with the airlines and with the Canadian government, actually, flying through from Missouri. It was like my second or third time through Canada, and going on over here to Georgia and ended up having to use Legal Shield, which, like I said, it's an active company with active services provided also in Canada, not only the United States, and now also the United Kingdom. But I got like, I don't know if it was like around 1,500 or $3,000 back on a plane ticket because I used Legal Shield. And although the Canadian authorities, they went through my laptop extensively. I mean, right there at the airport, they had gone through. It's the only place in the world where they've done this, which I'm not exactly too fond of Canada. But like, I got a friend on here from Canada that just liked one of my posts about. It was actually the share on the video Barbie, you know, Aqua. I think Aqua is the group, but Barbie girl, you know, Ken and Barbie song. And so the thing is that I don't really like Canada because of this. No, I'm just joking. I mean, but I don't like this socialist type system they have up there and what I've heard about it. For example, my dad's up there fishing with a group of his banker friends and other friends. He's up there fishing at a lake in Canada for a couple of weeks, 12 days, I think. And he's got this really cool video of a moose in the water going across the lake. My dad took the video with a camera. Do I have my camera? My camera's over here. I'm not going to go get it. But same camera that I've got. It's a Sony CyberShot XHCX or something like that. Anyway, it's one with a 50x optical zoom lens. So he used that camera to take the video of the moose crossing the lake, and it was really, really cool. So, but my dad hated the system in Canada, socialist system, as most Americans would, at least in the Midwest. Okay, you other people off in the other parts of America, I don't know what you're thinking about. Whatever, I'm not worried about it. But in the Midwest, nobody's going for the socialism, or very, very few. So here's an example of what my dad saw up there. He went to buy something, you know, from the shop. Maybe it was a sandwich, maybe it was something else to eat or a drink or whatever. And what he noticed is that it was really kind of stupid situation because all the other fishermen were talking about this. The products were sky high. I mean, we're talking like 12 or 15 bucks for something that in Missouri would only be like $5, for example, because of the fact that they have so many rules, so much bureaucracy, because of their socialist type of system, to where like they had, and to promote employment and all this shit, because it's not free market capitalist system. So they had somebody over here and somebody over here, and these people were selling like the alcohol or tobacco and had to be separate from this stuff over here, like food products, food items, whatever, because they had to promote more employment because of their socialist system and all this and that, instead of the capitalist normal free market system, which is total Americana. You know, not that that's a perfect system, but it's far more superior, in my opinion, than anything else out there. And I've been around the world. I've not been into every country, but I've been in over 30 countries, layovers included or not. And so that made the price of cigarettes super high, the price of alcohol super crazy high, simply because of their rules of separating things out and providing more employment and forcing this on small business or even the larger business. It's just a really crazy. So in that country, my experience there was that they had searched the whole goddamn. They went through they had to make me go through my laptop, and they're like, well, oh, so you're a journalist? Hey, well, here's all these photos. Yeah, well, what's this? What's that? They were asking about my photos in my computer, and which any intelligence service at some level will be able to access remotely, and so will at least a dozen different American companies without any warrant, because when you sign on to these different, like Facebook can see everything you're doing here, and they have a data sharing agreement with the governments, or certain government agencies or whatever, so it's almost like kind of redundant, stupid situation at the airport. So, and they didn't have me per se in a situation where I was even detained or under arrest. It might have been detained, I can't remember, but it wasn't a situation where I could apply the legal shield yet, the lawyer yet. It's a real tricky situation, because technically they were checking my stuff, but technically they didn't arrest me or something like that. They were looking at my stuff, so they're like, So I couldn't really apply the legal shield because I have actually a card where if I'm stopped like that, then they have to be calling the police. I mean, the law firm. They have to, you know. In fact, I don't have to say anything. I just pull this card out and show it, and they have to call to, or allow me to call, rather, to my legal team. And then they begin at that moment to represent me. So it's just like, and I'm actually already represented because of this legal insurance, because of this legal membership, because of this legal network, because of this legal team that I always have. I always have that for $17 a month. So I love Legal Shield. I love their service, and now they're available in the United Kingdom. So, and because I had to fly back to the States and take another flight and derail and all that stuff, we ended up using Legal Shield with the airline, which was Air Canada, and I got all my money back for that flight. That was a so, and that's because of Legal Shield. So everything in that situation that could have went really further south, let's say, or the wrong way, it went the right way in the end because I was compensated for every bit of it, every penny that I should have, and that's because of Legal Shield. So, but when it comes to kind of that type of situation up there, where you're like in limbo, you know, they're like looking at like, well, what's this photo? What's that photo? It's like, well, I'm a journalist. Like, well, did you get paid for it? No, I didn't get paid for it. Oh, well, we don't consider that legitimate journalism because if you didn't get paid for that, well, then it's not legitimate. So that's how the Canadian security police at the airport were looking at it when I'm thinking, okay, well, if it's not legitimate, dumbass, how did I get into NATO and film NATO Military Committee under the NATO Military Committee press accreditation, dumbass? But I didn't say that. I was polite. I let it go. And I just didn't say anything because I could have logically and morally and ethically, and I think probably by the end within the term of law, I think that that was the stupidest statement I ever heard by Canadian authorities. Yeah. Well, we don't consider it legitimate then. Oh, really? You don't consider NATO Military Press Committee with a NATO command, a whole, you know, at least 6 or 7 NATO generals and NATO, you don't consider that legitimate? And I could go on and on. I could go into dozens of different stories. So, but that was their statement in Canada. So, you know, they're just very, very stupid. But I got every dime back because I had Legal Shield. So Legal Shield's operating it. So about Wi-Fi in Marshall, Missouri, you just if you had Legal Shield at $17 a month, you just take a copy of your service contract and ask them for it, or get it off their website, or whatever you did to sign on to get Wi-Fi, whichever company you're using, even if it's the city's company or whatever. So then you would pass that over. You document the outages, maybe take photos and or video or whatever's going on with the outages on the Wi-Fi, and especially if there's a lot of people having that problem, they have to provide based on the terms of service in their contract. That contract has, of course, is in writing, and that can be reviewed by your lawyer. In my case, I have a team of lawyers. I have a whole legal network, and I have people from all over the world that I could quickly put up any document on. In fact, if I lost everything right now, if they deplatform me, I could easily go to a number of search engines and I'll be found by a group of people that follow me and interact with me from around the world. Because of the different groups that I'm involved with, I'm a member of a number of international organizations that not only Legal Shield, for example, which is technically, anytime I deal with the U.S. Embassy, I'm a U.S. citizen, that's U.S. government, and that still is under the auspices of Legal Shield because that's a U.S. citizen, U.S. government issue often. And so I'm covered basically, and to a certain extent, by extension of proxy, so to speak, basically way further than that in some ways, in certain aspects. So, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice, and I don't practice law. How about that? So, back to another topic. So, on what other friends was posting, Van Halen, my favorite band, especially when I competed in Taekwondo, because of David Lee Roth David Lee Roth. I mean, I can't take anything away from Eddie Van Halen and his brother and the music and all that stuff. And I love Sammy Hagar, so I'm not putting anybody else in the band down or to the side. The drummer was awesome too. I'm not, but Van Halen was my favorite inspiration in terms of right before a competition in Taekwondo. So it's like my brother, mother, father, and I were driving out to St. Louis, Missouri to compete, or Columbia, Missouri to compete in Taekwondo, forms and sparring. Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska to compete in Taekwondo. And there, I'm not sure if it was in Topeka or not. I'd have to go back and remember. But Kansas was just, Kansas City is both Missouri and Kansas. State lines running right through there. And Kansas City, of course. So there's all these different places there that I competed in Taekwondo. Always would listen to Jump with David Lee Roth doing his, jump spinning crescent kicks and his, jumping up in the air and doing the splits and all that stuff that I were doing at that time excellently, and competed in forms and sparring and picked up many trophies and all that stuff. And even in Nebraska, I remember being in a sparring match with a black belt, and first degree black belt. And even though he had the body gear, like the chest pad on and stuff like that, I'll never forget. I've told this story before. The black belt had punched me so hard with a typical twisting punch to the chest, just right dead center. And even with the protective body gear, you could just feel the blood rush, just doosh. I'm not kidding. I was just like, I'm surprised it didn't like bruise the heart or something, even with the protective gear. I mean, this is dangerous, that level of martial arts, the Taekwondo. You can break. We broke boards, at least 2 or 3. Here's how I tested for a black belt in front of 6 Korean masters or grandmasters. I had to break. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 here, 2 and 3. I had to break to pass black belt testing. Also, to spar against, I think it was 3 to 5 other people, which was great because there's been many times I've fought multiple opponents on the street fights, and sometimes there wasn't even a fight because after they saw what I could do and did do, everybody would freeze. Everybody would freeze. Like they were just frozen, or they just. Now in some cases, there was a couple guys that kept coming and trying to swing on me and all this stuff, and they're like, "Why don't you fight back or hit back?" Because they couldn't touch me. They could not touch me. These old school boys, Marshall, Missouri, out in the parking lot, Odell Street, a couple of little thug boys back then run around. Like I saw, they were at a gas pump at a gas station, old pickup truck, country road boys that get out. They were the bullies of the town at the time, and somebody, they just punch them, and they were real assholes. And I said, the reason I'm not going to fight you back right now, because I said, if I fight you back right now, you're going to the hospital. And I said, I have a pending civil case regarding, this whole divorce, typical American divorce situation with my son. And I said, I don't need any trouble right now. And I said, because if I fight you back, you're not going home tonight. You're going to the hospital. And so, then of course that's how Joey ended up in the hospital, who was at the time Ashley Castle, who is on my Facebook here, was a witness to this. So was Sean Kaltoff and some other people. But Joey ended up almost dead. He almost died in the hospital because I came over to his house and he punched me in the jaw. And of course I had every ethical, legal, moral right to self-defense, and he almost died the next day of internal bleeding at Fitzgibbon Hospital. So I love Van Halen. Nice to see Troy Eads, former U.S. Naval Navy career man, post Van Halen. Unfortunately, Eddie just passed. I love Holland. When I go to Holland, I have been treated always very well, but they know everything about me. They're like, "What are you doing? What have you been living in Georgia?" Like like, it's almost like, well, it's like maybe they're a little bit offended because I hadn't spent so much time in the homeland of Amsterdam, Holland, Holland, Deutschland, because my last name is Vanderpool, and they consider me the long lost son, and they're probably thinking, what the hell? Why don't you just stay here and the land of tulips and you know beautiful, awesome, the Van Gogh Art Museum and all this, you know, cool coffee shops, right? Where they have recreational legalized, well, it's semi-legal, I guess. Anyway, well, I did have some fun at a couple of those, at least on a couple of different visits there. I don't like, it rains a lot there, okay? I'll tell you that. I don't like all that rain. And the Dutch language itself was incredibly difficult. But they've always been really nice and respectful. And I've spent New Year's there. And New Year's was interesting. I met, like a lot of people there were on the train and stuff but you could tell they had been at the cafes. They were all laughing and giggling, and not all of them, but certain ones. Everything was pretty laid back. They're pretty active with the drug dogs. They had these little drug dogs, these little sniffer dogs that would come out, and the Amsterdam police, men and women, they'd come out with these little sniffer dogs. It was at the train stations. It was at the airports. They keep pretty active about that. They're very, very much in control of that situation. They're not going to allow their country to be like a transit point at the transport hubs and all that for what is available at some of their coffee shops. Let's say that. So back to the friends that are up right now. I got one friend that tried to call me. I have to leave, so I'm not going to get into phone conversation right now while I get ready to walk out. But I basically wanted to talk about the legal shield first, and the second situation about a little bit about like the whole travel issue about whether you're gonna, like travel right now. Like there's a woman that's Georgian that is an American. She's had her American citizenship for like a year or more than a year. She's back in Tbilisi right now. She'll want to meet here in some days or whatever when the quarantine ends. And the thing with me is like, like I met one girl here a couple times that was working at a very nice clothing store. She managed it. And I don't know what she's doing now, if she's still doing that or not, because everything's kind of locked up right now. But in this location, in this country, temporarily. So because of the pandemic. So my attitude is very simple. I don't fly right now because I don't want to, number one, risk getting infected or picking up a viral load, increasing viral load, whichever the situation is. I don't want to do that. And the second is I don't want to bring. If I did come in contact with a mutated strain of the virus, for example, in Switzerland, some weeks ago they found another very highly contagious, and even maybe, I don't know if they said it's more deadly or not, but way more contagious mutated strain of the virus that they had tracked all the way back into the summer with their tracking. This is like Swiss medical scientists. And so, and then around the same time, I saw news on Texas University. I think it was at Houston, but the Texas University had determined a similar situation where they had a mutated strain of the virus there. And so, like, what kind of situation would it be if I'm on the plane and I have to go through one international airport, flight to second international airport? And that would be the first international flight, second international flight to the third international airport, and then I either take a rental car, for example, and drive home to reduce the viral load, to reduce the risk, right? But if I've picked up a mutated strain and then bring that back into, wherever, that's part of the question I have. Now, they have the whole vaccine issue, and I began to look that up because I read one headline, only the headline, that Twitter is like doing something about deleting certain types of vaccine information. Maybe we could call it misinformation. Let me use that word. So then I quickly found that there is a U.S. government agency that anybody can find quickly, easily on a Google search, for example. Not that I'm trying to promote Google. Let's say Yahoo. No, let's just get away from that, right? That's what I'm going to try to do. And so the entire U.S. government website that deals with this specific issue is on compensation and dealing with the vaccine injury victims and claims. And then I went in and looked for the lawyers that deal with that, and there's something like $4 billion in one case that was in total, distributed out or rewarded to or awarded to those that are victims of vaccine injuries. So that's gone on for many years anyway, and this is before there was ever a pandemic. So that is a valid issue. It's a real concern. It's a legitimate topic of research and discussion. And there are some law firms and a actual U.S. government agency that have devoted all of their resources toward that topic. So this is an incense stick, by the way. Myself, I'm thinking that after the second or third round of the vaccine thing, then maybe they will start to learn something. As far as what I'm curious about is information I've read out of FIGU, F-I-G-U, FIGU in Switzerland, the Billy Edward Albert Meier publications, writings, etc. He's been ahead of this thing since back, a long time ago, but as far as specific information, like what are they doing based on that information with blood types and groups with blood types in terms of different immunities. And again, I have the question about the viral load theory. Is that something that if you, as a frontline health care worker, for example, and you are getting a lot of exposure and your viral load is that why there's more deaths of medical doctors and nurses working on the front line? And what is the research with 4-life transfer factor? As far as I know what the research is, okay? I used to take that product. I've known about that for a long, long time. So there's a guy that is from Georgia, medical expert, that is like the ambassador to the United Nations from Georgia, that's an expert on all the medical stuff. So my question is, they use the transfer factor in Russian hospitals. It's a derivative of cow's milk, colostrum. Basically what it does is it's basically as close to a natural product as you can get if you consider cow's milk, colostrum. That's like what the baby cows are getting in that milk to build their immunity. And so what happens is, as you take transfer factor capsules, you begin to develop a very, very rapid response. Your immune system, your as a human being, human immunity, your immune system gets a much, much faster reactive immune system response to any viral or bacterial infection. And so if you are taking transfer factor, you basically have a greater immune system. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice. I don't treat, dose, diagnose disease or practice medicine. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't practice medicine. And I'm not giving medical advice. I want to make that clear. This live stream is for information and entertainment purposes only, because when I get back home, the hell knows, they may just come and take all my books, and if on the little whim of this or that, and keep my computers and everything else. You never know, because maybe I said the wrong thing, right? So this is just for information and entertainment purposes only. But transfer factor 4, as in the number 4, for life, transfer factor is from cow's milk. It is from the colostrum, and it's an isolated. Its transfer factor is what builds. It gives a much more rapid, stronger, faster immune system response. So there's other issues. There's other things to look at with all this. But as far as what the the Georgian expert, medical expert to the United Nations, was talking about, because I was just targeted with this on Facebook. I was sponsored, I had targeted. I saw someone else share the news. It was Lamara Aboridze. This is Anano Fativa's grandmother, who is a school teacher. I think one of the things I noticed about Anano early on is, on Facebook a couple years ago or something, like, she's got a very inquisitive mind. She's a little bit outspoken, actually, although not exactly, because probably the society she's in. I kind of was shocked. She's got some pretty strong opinions. It's very interesting. I looked at her and didn't know she'd have such some strong opinions. And she's just like her grandmother in that sense. And that's probably one of the reasons I think she's got a very interesting mind. She's got an inquisitive mind. So her grandmother had passed over to her Facebook wall the article from this United Nations medical expert. So but the issue was on staffing, hospital staffing. Well, back, I had made a video about what was my family's business then. They've since sold it. It's a nursing care business. They've been in there for more than 30 years. I myself ran a small residential care facility, or nursing home, residential care facility, and at least 5 years I was there as administrative assistant. And I've always been helping with this or that here and there when I'm either overseas or not, with this or that, if and when I'm needed, because I have all this experience from working with the state. I did a pilot project program called the Fulton 55. I was licensed under both the Department of Mental Health and the Division of Aging. Basically, the only reason I still wasn't doing that is because I saw one guy, Gene Molman, at the cooperative workshops at Marshall, Missouri on Slater Street. He was just sitting at the table. They basically had neglected him. They basically just human shelved him there. He'd just sit at the table, but yet I found out I don't know if it was $800 a day or $200 a day, but it was a ridiculous amount of money that they were getting on a special program. He had a speech impediment. He had physical disability. He had very big speech impediment and physical disability, both diagnosis of another kind too. And that's why he was at the cooperative workshop, and basically he was just at a table by himself, basically neglected. And I called that Medicaid fraud investigator from the Missouri State Attorney General's office. They came out, and the actual investigator came down with me. We went out there. They tried to accuse me of 12 different points, which I defeated so well and handled the meeting so well. He asked me, he says, "Where did you get your education? I'm so impressed. Where did you?" And I said, "Well, last year I went to university. I was at CMSU, which is now CMU, and I took speech communication classes, because when I went over to entrepreneurship for a year over at Johnson County Community College in Overland Park, Kansas, or Lenexa there, I learned that the more education you have in America, these are the facts. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. These are the facts. The more education you have in America, the less likely you are to become a millionaire. Because it's what a teacher also taught me at CMSU. The more education you get, the more programmed, the more in the box you will think, and you will be programmed to, and you will see less. You will be less problem solver. Not always, but more often. You will be less of a problem solver. You will think outside of the box less. You'll be less inventive, less creative. All the things that have made America and Americans great, among the greatest on the planet in all time, in all history. As far as modern known history, there's a lot of history that's been hidden and that has been disappeared, or that is kept suppressed. But acknowledging what standard so-called orthodox, what's taught mostly in schools around the world, not the hidden history and the forgotten history of these great civilizations like Atlantis and Mu, and all these different civilizations that existed far and were far greater probably in many ways than our current civilization. So, but that's the fact. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to continue with entrepreneurship classes, because I understood that once I could speak just enough language to understand an accounting program, which is the thing I hated the most, was accounting, and to speak with intelligently and understand, to work with an accountant, right, then I'd be better off to learn people skills and communication, because that's a great skill to have, whether you're working in any field, or whether you're in business for yourself or entrepreneurship or not. So I went over to CMSU to do that. That's why I left entrepreneurship over in there, and that's where. And I told him, I said, that's where I got my education in terms of dealing with like speech communication, nonverbal communication, all these different things like that. And so, basically, though, that guy that was running that place was was a speech pathologist, not running it but own it, and he had been making $100,000 a month. I've told this story many times. Roger Garlick. He had a senator in his pocket. That guy died in 2015, 2014. It's in the Sedalia Democrat News. Roger Garlick, garlic like garlic, but with an E on the end, or an H. I'm sorry, H I think on the end. And that's how you spell his last name, Garlich, I believe. So here's a guy that was trying to buy out my father's business because it was a competing business to what he did anyway. Plus, they considered me a threat because I would go to the Missouri Attorney General's office, like I did. Missouri State Attorney General's office investigators there finally went on another incident. I won't go into the whole story here again and again, but they had threatened that if they didn't get rid of me, they'd get rid of my dad's clients. And that was the CMRC Regional Center Director there in Columbia, Missouri, Department of Mental Health, that threatened my father on behalf of Roger Garlick, who had Senator Matheson in his pocket. Without going into the second final story of me turning in, Bill Davis went down with a heat stroke. He had a heat stroke on his medical record. Fitzgibbon Hospital threatened me if I didn't turn it in. They turned me in for reporting, which was dumb because I always turn that stuff in. Had Danita Hensley, my RN consultant there, literally in the facility. She had to be there, I think, I don't know if it was 2 hours a month or 8 hours a month back then. I don't remember because the rules and regs may have changed. But she'd come in, she'd do medication reviews, would have her do some training. Maybe not CPR, maybe, but it was on medication and safety issues, whatever it was on the agenda that month. We'd have in-staff training, so So the nurse was there, and I'm like, there's no way that everybody wouldn't have known about it anyway because she was literally on site. And where the guy went down was just about less than a block away from the property that we owned behind the RCF. So it was politics. And me being a so-called, I guess you couldn't even call that a whistleblower. I was simply did my job as mandated by law. And what they didn't like is that I emailed about it and posted it in the local community in terms of emails. So I'd email if this guy was almost dead, what are they doing out there? They had an air conditioning system. They told my clients to go home and get their winter coats in the middle of August. They were mildly mentally retarded. In this case, the guy had a dual diagnosis of mentally ill, bipolar disorder with something, and mild mentally retarded. So he, being told to put on his winter coat, comes out of the back of the business, goes up on his way to Dairy Queen, fell over and could have died. If they didn't catch it quick enough, he would have died. Heat stroke. He'd have been dead. And then whose fault is that? We didn't provide the protective oversight, but we gave him his free will, right? But my orders were that all the winter coats were to be put away because they didn't have this ability to make these kind of judgments, which is why I had the winter coats put in the basement, locked away, while the cooperative workshops out there in Marshall, Missouri, owned by Roger Garlick, we're telling them we don't want to put any more money in fixing the air conditioning system you guys, you're cold in here, just bring your winter coats, which that caused him to almost. So I was out, not by a legal measure, not by an official we did an investigation and found that this. No, there's nothing like that at all. What it was is simply that it was a threat from a multi-millionaire businessman who had a U.S. senator in his pocket, Roger Garlick, and that senator was James Matheson in Sedalia, Missouri. And they retired quite comfortably. They're fishing on the lake. And see, it's all there in the Sedalia Democrat or funeral home obituary on Roger Garlick. That's Garlick with an H. It's abuse of power. Because when the Attorney General's investigator called me back, he's like, never in 22 years of my being an investigator, fraud investigator for the Missouri State Attorney General's office, never in 22 years have I been threatened. But today I was threatened. He was talking to me. Wasn't talking to Jack Vanderpool, my father, the owner. Wasn't talking to anybody. He told me that. So that's when I made the records request to the state of Missouri. I wanted to get records of that. They're not going to give that for obvious reasons. And okay, so they're not going to give that. But
that's why I call legal shield, and the lawyer had it pretty understood. He understood my side of it, but he also kind of understood the state side of it, that they're not gonna tell on themselves. Because at this point, this is a story that goes back to around 1999 anyway. So that's what that story is. And the reason I bring that up is because I know what abuse of power is about. When you live in Saline County, I run into a lot of it, and that's not being a whistleblower. That's doing your goddamn job if you're an administrative assistant of a nursing care home with a licensing under Department of Mental Health and Division of Aging as far as on the business itself, and you're administrating that, and you're involved with the direct hands-on management of staff and medical care of your clients. You hire and fire doctors in some cases. The same with anybody else that has any contact with them. And I'm answering directly to the state of Missouri. I'm either under investigation or I'm involved in investigating. I'm involved in the investigation. So it could go any of these different ways. So there I am, and there it is. That's it. That's an old story. But it's a story where I learned a lot in those years because, you didn't have to do anything wrong. You just got somebody that's abusing power, and that's exactly what they did. To the extent that not even an investigator from the Missouri Attorney General's office could do anything. He got threatened. You're dealing with somebody that had over $100,000 a month income. He was a competing businessman. He had given congressional testimony, Senate, Congress. He had been giving testimony. He's a former U.S. Army veteran. He was a speech pathologist by training. Then he got in this business. And what's so ironic is that the client that I first had this, Attorney General from the Attorney General fraud investigator come down and began the Medicaid fraud investigation about, which is really a form of neglect, was a person that had a severe speech impediment. That's the irony of this whole thing. The biggest irony of all. Then there he would just sit at the table. After this happened, they put extra staff. They had at least one staff there with him, checking on him, or with him sitting at the table. They put other people there. They had him go out to do activities in the community and stuff like that, because when you isolate somebody like that, that would be considered abuse and neglect, or a form of, well, literally, it's neglect. So that's when I would come out there, and I would pick up my clients, drop off my clients. I may have to go in there. It wasn't very often. Maybe I needed to drop some medication for somebody that was attending, their programs there, working there, whatever, doing recreational, whatever they were doing there. Maybe I need to go in there and check up on something. Maybe there's a behavioral issue or some other issue. Then that'd be the only time I'd even enter that place. Basically, I would just take people out there and then make sure, they got to where they needed, and then pick them up. That was kind of what I was doing at that time. So that was all unofficial. Nothing official about it, all unofficial. But when I wrote about it and put it out to the community, that really, really pissed off the state anyway, at least the local social workers office over that deal with some of the state programs. They're like, you're so dramatic about it. You said he could be dead, dead, dead. It's like, yeah, should I not be dramatic about it? He almost did die. Would that not be dramatic? If, hey, well, a guy wore his winter coat, it's 108-degree heat index, Missouri, he walks out the back, he's dead. Should I not be dramatic about that? Because that shouldn't be happening. The process, the thing that created that risk to that client's life, I'm held responsible for providing our business, family business, my family's business, providing protective oversight. Well, they went against house rules. They went against my written policy, my directive to my staff, my manager. I had a manager, full-time manager. They went against all that and directly ordered him to bring his winter coat to work, August, 108-degree heat index. So the fact that even Fitzgibbon Hospital then, you don't turn that in. Because I'm on the phone, I'm like, here's what's going on. The guy went down, he had heat stroke. He's had heat stroke. I'm like, if you don't turn that in, they threaten me. We'll turn you in for non-reporting.
So I turn it in. I even turn it into Senator Matheson. I didn't know Senator Matheson was in Roger Garlick's pocket. And if you go to Sedalia Democrat News and you look at Roger Garlick's obituary, you find that Senator Matheson, James Matheson, Sedalia, Missouri, was an honorary pallbearer. In other words, he actually helped physically carry the casket at and the putting the casket on literally the grave of Roger Garlick. This guy gave Senate testimony. He had incredible power. He had $100,000 a month income from his competing businesses. That's why he offered to buy my dad out of business. So by getting me out of the business, what did they hope? They hoped that Jack would have folded. And it took several years before Jack finally got out of the business. And I started to travel overseas sometime after that. And about within 2 years after that, I started to travel overseas. Within 2 years. Well, that would have been, let me go back, that would have been more like 5 years. And Jack stuck with it still for a few years. I remember being in Ukraine, for example. I don't know how much longer exactly Jack was in the business, but Jack, actually the manager that I had, he pretty much had her, because I had taken it to the place of being able to, I had a very talented witch that I would go to, and because I studied a lot of like people that would give readings using runes or tarot cards, or maybe even some astrology charts, or maybe some gematria, different systems of divination, like coming from one state. Like I would date this woman for a while in Kentucky. I came back into St. Louis. St. Louis had they had a bookstore that I'd stop at. They'd have these psychic fairs, and I got a reading or two in there, and I'd look at their books. I was researching the occult. I was practicing magic, and so I would study and get readings from different people and see who was accurate, who was not accurate, what systems they're using, how they're doing it, what's bullshit, what's not, what had seemed to have some validity or accuracy, what didn't. And so I had one very talented witch that I went to in Kansas City, Missouri, and it was Darla Thrasher. She actually lived in North Kansas City. But I'd see her initially, I'd later see her at her house. She would give some readings. She had a room set up in her house where she'd see clients. And she was like into Reiki and some other things, but she was an excellent tarot reader. As she said, she goes, it looks like you're going to have to, your father is he's got to terminate you. He's going to have to fire you. He doesn't want to do it, but it's just like he's forced to do it. And that was about 4 months before this story that I told had happened. And so I had already begun to prepare the business to be able to be absentee owner. And see, all these years that my grandparents and my aunt had run those businesses, they were obsessed with it. That's all they did. They lived next door, which I was living next door. And they lived, ate, and breathed business. That's why I get along really well with business class people, business class family, like Nana Aladashvili. Hotel business, 20 years. Perfect. This is mind-blowing compatibility, because as friends, it was like almost like second family there for a little while, until everybody got jealous and things got a little bit strange. Her family said, if you talk to him, we're not going to talk to you, and half her family stopped speaking to her. I'm 50 years old right now. She's 58 years old, so there's an 8-year age difference. She's quite a bit older than me. And this is how it went. And her daughter and her cousin stopped speaking to me, because what they were doing was they saw on YouTube Pakistan drone strikes from under President Obama, killing the shit out of people. And over there, their culture is completely different. Their family is more like 10,000 or like 1,000. Like if you were to affect a Pakistan person or a group of Pakistan, like in the family, it's not just like you've pissed off or affected in a negative sense. If it's a negative effect, that's like you pissed off like 10 or 15, or maybe like who they're married to, like and like you've got two families and cousins or something. No. It's completely different cultures. All of a sudden you've offended you've deeply done something to like 1,000 people. or maybe even 10,000 people. It's like it's completely different social structure. And I'm not going to say I pretend to understand it, but I understood enough about it to know that it was a huge, huge, huge problem. Because basically there was these unrestrained, unchecked drone strikes occurring under the Obama administration, and most people didn't know about it. And I was seeing different news from all around the world, which really would piss off military and defense people, Americans, when I'd run into them, which was mostly arranged by Georgian government. They'd make it to where here the Georgians would come and they'd get me and like, let's go play pool, which Gocha would do. And I'm not mad at Gocha, but after a while knew what Gocha was doing. Gocha was checking me. He's investigating me. He's from the Department of Justice. He made it clear though, but we were good friends. But number one thing they all want to find out is, who do I love? Who do I love? This is the number one thing. By the way, before I forget, I had my tablet here because this all connects together, the stuff that nobody knows about. I was telling my mom and brother about it though, or my brother about it. And because my mom's not a technical person, I didn't tell her. I told my brother about it. And what the tablet was doing, I'm going off course for a second. What the tablet was doing is it would shake and it would, like you could set it for vibration. And I'm like, but I didn't have it set for that. But you can set it for that. But I didn't have it set for that. The second thing is that Facebook would keep shutting down, coming back on, shutting down, coming back. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I'm looking at it. And as I'm looking at this live stream right now, there's a light, and that is the camera, the web camera on the laptop. But on the tablet, which is over here, it's probably fully charged. I should probably take it off the charger. Anyway, it would do this. It would shut down and shake a little bit, and then the light would snap. It was snapping photos of me. One time I'd live stream for an hour or two on that device, and it was hot. The electrical thing was just super hot. One time I was in Shakfateli, and I couldn't even keep the battery going. Battery would just drain so much if I do in the live stream or be on there. It just did. So it's almost like, do they have some sort of like malware, or are they hacking it? Are they running experiments? Was it an attempt to intimidate me? Was it a freak malfunction, just accident, tech error, tech issue? Or was it an attempt by U.S. corporation or government agencies or whatever, intelligence or whatever? Was it an attempt to remind me that, hey, you're being watched, we can take photos of you, if we can do it, they can do it, what you say, do, whatever, whatever, whatever. But I'm not kidding. Regardless of why or what, all I know is that that thing would do the vibration, and it shouldn't. But there's a setting for it. That's the thing. When I did the live stream, I couldn't figure out, like, why is the goddamn battery just... I had to plug it in. The plug-in was just burning up hot. I'm like, what the fuck? What is that? So what it was is, and they can get in there and they can remotely move your stuff, especially if they're a company. But if they're a hacker, if the company can do it, corporation can do it. You know how you give them permission on a tech support call? They're like, well, can we have access? We're going to go in and remotely do this or that, and they'll just take over your computer if to fix something, software issue, or to see if they can find the issue or whatever. So what it was doing is that the brightness had been moved up, first of all, which takes up more battery. I'm like, well, I didn't do that unless it was an accident where I maybe just touch screen device, you can accidentally move stuff. But so anyway, back to Pakistan and my friends. So I just had to throw that in before I forgot. So the two girls had been watching YouTube, and they'd seen this. And basically it could even be considered propaganda, but a lot of the propaganda is built on 80% truth, 20% false information or diversion or misinformation. In that case, it would be disinformation, because propaganda, you wouldn't call it misinformation. The 20%, say, in a standard model of what we're talking about, template for propaganda, you would call that disinformation. Inaccurate information with the intention to deceive, basically, or disinformation. So anyway, bottom line is they saw that the American drone strikes were killing the hell out of the Pakistani people, which is not so far from here. And so they stopped talking to me. That was it. They done. That's it. We're done with you. Not speaking to you. That's it. And the rest of the family's like, The other issue is that we were talking about going to New Zealand, or they talked about coming to America and starting a business there. Well, a couple of the family worked in the business. They get extra money. They come and work on the weekend, maybe work a few days out of the week. One of the cousins working there like full time. And so this was a threat. I was a threat in their eyes, not only to the business but to the family, because she had a daughter. They were very good friends. That's anytime you get into all this stuff where you have kids involved or whatever, and you talk about moving to another state, moving to another country, that's a problem for relatives. They don't want to see them go. They don't like. In fact, we had that was why we didn't speak for about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that, because the daughter said she went to England, and I knew when she'd go there, she wouldn't want to stay in Georgia anymore. She'd want to move, and she did. She's like, the people are so kind, they're so helpful, they're so different, everything is so much more free, it's so much more relaxed, there's so much more to do, blah, 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 blah. But she had a boyfriend, Georgian boyfriend, and they've been together for a while, and for a couple of years, I think, at least. So what it was is that also her mother decided, well, she thought she'd let her go, but she didn't want her to go. This is the biggest problem with the whole Georgian thing. It's not it's a problem how you want to look at it, I guess. But the issue, this is how it was when I met with Kate's parents on Ligadeki. When we're going to see each other again. They don't want to lose. They know that when their son or their daughter leaves this country, it's tragic. This is the biggest tragic story of Georgia. When their son or daughter leaves, they know, no matter what, that it may be a long time, if ever, you'll see them again. Like this one woman that's here, and she's visiting her family, and I'll finally get to see her. She's wanted to meet me for years, but she was here last time, and for whatever reasons, we didn't match up to meet. But sometimes it takes maybe a year, maybe a couple of years, depends on your financial situation. She's a nurse. I think she's a registered nurse now. I don't know if she's a registered nurse yet or not. But she's a nurse. I mean, she's got, this is one of the number one, you can find a job being a nurse anywhere in the U.S. And if you're an RN, I don't know if she got her RN or not, but if you're an RN, you're making very good money. It's one of the better jobs to have. I think if you're a stripper, full-time striptease, like dancer, and if you're a woman, you're probably making that much money or more. Depends. Situation, club, and the girl and all that. But RN, registered nurse, that'd be on the level of one of the better jobs you can get as a woman in America. As far as pay, as far as salary. So, but it's like with her though, she hadn't been able to come over here for some years. Good job, good money. She's in America, and she was here last year, but it took her some years to get over here. So, and that's typically the case. You have to be either very free with your time, your ability to travel like that, or you have to have a considerable amount of money, because most Americans can't come up with $1,000 for a plane ticket there and back. And a lot of times it's much more than that. Depends on how you book the tickets and when. As in what time of the year you're going to travel. And again, it could come down to whether you got the free time to do it or not. Are you working or not? If you got obligations or not? You got family, business, whatever, to be able to travel. So that's the number one concern. Number one concern is when will we see our son or daughter or our relative again? A lot of people will leave this country, go out and make money, send money back. They're trying to make money in another country because it's not much money. And I'm talking about before the pandemic, to send back to support their family, their loved ones here in this country. So the fact that they started talking about starting a business in New Zealand or starting a business even in America, for example. We went one time talking about E2 investor's visa. Looked at a hotel on the lake, for example. It would have been like a $250,000 investment, for example, but it was a damn good one, damn good location and all that. But the rest of the family thinks, oh my God, there's our jobs, there's our income, there's our cousin or my niece or whatever, and all this stuff is all of a sudden that's it. That's Plus, some of them were very, just a couple of them that were pretty pro-Moscow. There's actually some people that believe 100% in this country that if there's a war between the U.S. and Russia will win. Absolutely. They don't have a second mind about it. Russia will win. This is not everybody's attitude, but there are those that I've met. I'm not talking about just in the family I just was referring to, but there are those that I dated one girl that worked with the Department of Justice here, as her master's in law now, and already had her degree in law then. She believed 100%. There's no question in her mind. Moscow will win a war against the United States. And to me, of course, this is crazy because at best, if one side or another won, no one else is going to be much alive. There'll be like 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 people will be dead around the world. It won't just be in that kind of war, because you have to understand what's really going to happen in a war like that. And to basically, if there is a survivor, you want to say you won. What did you win? Well, you won nuclear winter is what you won, and you won. Have fun growing your food and scavenging for the rest of it, because that's just how it's going to work. It's like Albert Einstein had said, World War III can be fought whatever, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. That's the reality. So anyway, but it's quite a different mindset you'll run into over here with some people. And so when you're with a business class family, though, that's how I spent most of my life, not all my life. So we spend time, these people, these friends, all in the business. You understand business, you understand how to meet people, you understand how to meet customers, you understand time, dealing with emergencies, dealing with, just business. So business class people really, really, really understood each other. And it's and investing in real estate, for example, like their stuff's like what my family does. In fact, my family just finished working on a rental house. Not the one that I was coming home to work on. It's another one. Another thing came up, another rental house. So my brother and my dad are in there working on that and getting all that stuff ready. And then, like, I would go into, like a friend had the hotel, the guest house over in the Vera or whatever, and there was something that needed to be fixed or repaired. And I told her, I said, I can do that. Oh, like they didn't think I could do that. And I was like, I need this board, though, to be able to do it, because there's this one long place that needs to be like this thick and 12 inches wide and needs to be like 12 feet long. I said, but I can fix it. I got up there and fixed it, and it blew their mind. Oh, like they didn't know I could do that. Well, I can do all kinds of stuff because that's where I come from, and that's what we were raised in. Because business. Because you can't just, you can go out and hire people to do this, hire people to do that, but the more you can do on your own, the more money you can save, the more you can get done, and then invest that money or buy the next asset, like another rental house, for example, instead of spending it on the carpenter up from the building supply shop or something with the business cards around, or maybe they're standing around the corner hoping to get some business and people come in to buy something or need to repair something, that kind of thing. So business class family is how we really could relate to each other very, very well. But this whole idea of starting a business someplace else means no, and then this news. But it's the number one thing that these Georgians would do. This is a little bit on the different topic, but I mentioned earlier, so I'm going to go back to this topic. It's a little bit separate topic altogether. One of the things that they would do, they would get me, and would go. There would be an American. They'd take me to Americans, Georgians, and one of them that did this, it was I guess he was American. He just graduated U.S. Air Force Cadet Academy or something. Now he said he was studying U.S. Air Force. It was like intelligence, military intelligence. So he was here to study the Russian language. This is a story he told me anyway. So Anna Avarsky is a good friend of Saakashvili, Mikhail Saakashvili at the time. And he's telling like, oh, well, I'm like, well, like they don't even have an air show anymore and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, they don't need an Air Force anymore. And things have changed. And I'm thinking, oh, bullshit, But then you see the war that was just fought over in Azerbaijan and Armenia, that war. Oh, my God. It's like, that's a whole different type of warfare. That could be kind of what they're talking about. But this guy's a little bit pissed off. He's a little bit, almost angry at me. He's like, well, the kind of news that I'd pass over from Debka file out of Israel, which is military intelligence news also, and then Russia, if it's Russian news, or even another country's news, that are very pissed off because that was, he said like this, here's how he said it. He goes, some of that news would be considered classified. And I'm thinking, well, if Israel published it and I simply pass over an article from Israel, well, then that's Israel's problem, isn't it? That's Debka Files' problem, isn't it? Or, if it's Russia Today, because there for a long while they were really, really, really after the Russian news. Although Ron Paul is just on Russian news, even I think this year, for example, one of the Russian news channels. I don't know if it was Russia Today or another one, but Ron Paul's an American. Ron Paul has been, senator for a long time or congressperson for a long time. He's a physician, medical doctor. His son is just yesterday talking about some stuff, Rand Paul. In fact, talking about how they should give a pardon. I just put it up, I shared the news from Fox News. They should pardon Edward Snowden, who is a whistleblower, U.S. National Security Agency, stuck in Moscow. And when I say stuck, I mean really stuck, because he'd flown into, I don't know if it was Beijing or Hong Kong or whatever, he flew into Moscow and they killed his passport. So he was able to stay after some deliberation and consideration in Russia. But, I think Trump's actually thinking very seriously about giving a pardon to Edward Snowden. That's kind of like big mind-blowing news, but Rand Paul is talking about it, and it might have been him who suggested it. So, the thing is, you have to understand that I think one of the things that I think that scared the holy living shit out of Russian President Putin. No offense. And I don't want to be point out a weakness. It's not what I'm getting at or be it. What I'm going to say is I'm just going to talk straight. Just be like, I think it scared the shit out of Putin, the capability of AI. And the thing is, that's the number one question I had after the Berkeley lecture in Kansas City that I was invited to attend to go to an event notification. It was Paula Dubrowski, whose father is either Ukrainian or Ukrainian American, so she's part Ukrainian. Paula Dubrowski is one of the longest term serving female diplomats in America. And Paula Dubrowski has served under the Reagan administration, the third highest position in the U.S. State Department, and Undersecretary of State. And I walk into Winstead's in Kansas City, and there she is, and she's talking to either the president or directors or something of the IRC Casey, and the Grand Street Cafe is right next door. I used to stop by Winstead's not every Friday or Saturday, but every Friday or Saturday. Every Saturday for sure. Sometimes on Fridays. But every Saturday without question. 90% of the time. I would drive from Blue Springs, Missouri in about a 30-minute, by the time you get down there though, about 30-minute drive into downtown Kansas City, Country Club Plaza, and actually would go on down and through Mission Hills, or actually come up through Rainbow Boulevard, actually, and I would come through the plaza later, coming back. But I would go down to Kansas City Youth for Christ, which was actually technically in Shawnee Mission, Kansas, on the Kansas City, Kansas side of the big city, greater metropolitan Kansas City area. And I would attend the Kansas City Youth for Christ, and I was on TV at least once. There, everybody was on TV. Well, not everybody, but they had whoever was presenting on the program or whatever it was. They had channel 50. So every Saturday I would be there, and the TV channel 50 was all over Kansas City. And one time I was actually on television. I was probably 15, 16, 17, something like that. And I even went to John Casablanca's modeling school there for about 5 lessons. Then they did that shit with makeup, and I'm like, I got in the car, they didn't get it all off, or maybe I didn't, I don't know. So I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me. I'm not going to have to wear makeup and be on TV. So I went and bought a home gym, got really, ripped up with the abs and all that stuff. I was doing Taekwondo. I went actually look at taking dance classes. I went to a professional, big, Overland Park, Kansas dance academy, dance studio. And I thought, so I ended up doing aerobics anyway, because aerobics was what one of our black belts was doing, I think it was Eric, or Bob, probably Bob. Bob was a hell of a black belt. Bob taught like Okinawan, like Shoinryu, like the snap technique, like really more. We already did that with Grandmaster Ko, but they even more in Shoinryu, Okinawan karate. This twisting on the end with like a, even with the uniform you have, but even without it, you could hear it at that level. You could just. So anyway, he, because of the endurance that it gave, suggested aerobics, especially to my father. So we started to go to aerobics, and so I didn't pursue dance anyway, but I thought about it because there was like Flash Dance. There was some other famous movies back then. John Travolta was the big dancer. There was Patrick Swayze, but I think that was later in those kind of dance-oriented movies. So I just went and bought a home gym. I gave up on John Casablanca's modeling school, but I was there and I was taking classes in like the 5th class. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do this makeup stuff, and it's not for me. And I'm going to buy a home gym, and I did, and I used it, and that's what I did with that. So, but every Saturday I'd be up there on the plaza anyway. So here I am. Let's go back to 2019. It's January. It's February. I'm back down on the plaza. There's Paula Dubrowski, and she's talking about the threat of, like, what are threats to U.S. national security. So my question on Facebook after, because it was my first time there, was quite an extraordinary event, especially for me personally. Quite frankly, everybody kind of knew, not everybody, but there were certain people that like knew my whole story, even knew what I was posting on Facebook, especially about the Georgians and what was going on over here. We kind of joked about it coming in, and you could understand the joke because it was so straight on to what I was posting about. Even the security guy knew. It was so funny. And we had a good laugh about that coming in. Because I have like this big story, like if you talk to an investigator over here, if you talk to an investigator over in Missouri, if you talk to certain people at the IRCKC, and if they know, I have this like huge story that almost nobody knows about because Facebook has been such like delete, censor, and so in a very sarcastic way, I've done it right back. It's like, oh, you want to do that? You want to take this down? You want to do? Oh, I'll take it down. Oh, you want to pin me up, invite me in, and call me a journalist or whatever? You want to censor me? I'll censor myself. How about that? How does that look? How does that look, Mister, Mrs.? Come on, let's do it again. Come on. Keep coming. Come on. I'll do it. We'll just show them how it works. We'll just teach. We'll just show them how it works. Come on. Censor me up. Come on. Cut me. I'll cut it down too. Come on. Let's dance. Let's shadow box. Isn't that what Bidzina's U.S. advisors are doing? Teach you how to shadow box. Really show them. Let's make some PR. Let's make this bitch look really something that it ain't. Yeah, I'm down with that. Let's do it. And we did it. So, but people know all these stories that no longer up there, and they're gone, this and that, because it's war, right? Just being entertaining, right? So, yeah, it's a war on the media, war on independent media, war on independent voices. You got one side building something up, you got another side wanting to tear it down, you got one group that has the censors, you got another group with a different agenda, and it all ends up in one big goddamn cake that's been like bashed all over the room by a bunch of rowdy kids that are 4 or 5 years old that don't know how to behave, and it's all over the walls. There's like a big mess. That's what it looks like to me. This is Facebook. So, I could go on to other platforms and all that stuff, and I just got targeted with a one-stream deal where you can upload to like a number of different, like Vimeo, and then there's even new social media I haven't even seen yet. I could do all that. So anyway, I'm going to go back to this other story. It's so much work to do all that stuff. So, but I'm in Kansas City. We're on the topic of the 23rd. I think it's the 23rd Berkeley Lecture Series. It's Paula Dubrowski, who served under President Reagan, Under Secretary of State, and like 5 in total presidential administrations. I'm in Winstead's. First of all, before I go into Grand Street Cafe to even see the presentation, there she is having a burger and fries and milkshake. I'm like, back home. This is where I grew up. This is where I was every weekend. 15 and a half, 16, 17, 18 years old. Every weekend. Kansas City, Missouri. Even at age 20, actually, because I worked at Worlds of Fun all summer, every summer, from 15 and a half years of age all the way into age 20. I finished up my last summer up there of 5 summers in Kansas City, Missouri, working at Oceans of Fun. Charmed life. Anyway, Threats to U.S. national security. So I studied the Meier case. Pretty simple to figure out what that can be. Artificial intelligence. You know, Terminator 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Man versus the machine. Half man, half machine. The machine takes over the weapons. This is the biggest warning of all from the Enoch prophecies. From Billy Edward Albert Meier. Enoch prophecies. The Enoch prophecies. Artificial intelligence. So you get a guy like Edward Snowden that knows all this NSA secrets, National Security Agency secrets. He gets stuck over in Russia, in Moscow, because they kill his passport when he's trying to fly through there. And then they find out probably, you know, some things, and Putin just looked almost ill after that happened. Like, apparently they've come to reconcile it since way back when, because now just in the last couple of weeks, Putin come out and send the news saying that we should, you know, he's talking to Russian society, you know, just like he talked about civil service as talking about matters of the heart, and he's got like 4 or 5 Russian cadets of some kind of military people that are going to school and getting educated, stuff like that, matters of the heart, which is like what we talk about over here. My story going into the Ministry of Defense, coming out, and soldiers got his hands over heart. It's kind of like a silent salute. Matters of the heart. It's a NATO. First time in history that American press had been in the building under the NATO Military Committee press. When I got Canadian security police at the airport. Now, you're not under arrest, so you can't call your lawyer. Oh, I'm not. What's these photos? Journalism. But did you get paid for it? No. It's not legitimate. Dumbass. Really? What about this NATO thing? They're not legit. What is that? They ain't got no brain. Anyway, so much for my Canadian love of Canada. We don't like the way you do things. You don't like the way we do things. Nice hunting and fishing up there, right? Father hasn't been back for a long time. I don't know if he's ever going to go back. So Russian President Putin is encouraging his people to catch up and be on the trend of artificial intelligence, entrepreneurs, I'm going to guess civil society, but let's say maybe not. You know, police, security, government, bureaucracy, city, entrepreneurs. The applications of AI, what AI is going to do, what it's not going to do. A good resource for this, regardless of what country you're in or what topic you have. If you're interested in how the future trends are going to go and be affected by artificial intelligence, a good website for that is alux.com, A-L-U-X.com, as far as the YouTube channel, actually, sorry. Aluxers is what they call them, Alux, luxury, class A. Let's say, Alux, A-L-U-X. Excellent YouTube channel for that, and that's how you do it. Look for like 15 trends, AI, or 15 trends, future jobs, this, that, the other. You will see how artificial intelligence is already, taking certain jobs out of the economy, replacing them with robots. Artificial intelligence has other applications outside of, just robotics, that is eliminating entire classes of so-called jobs. There's, like, for example, truck drivers will be probably pretty rare in the future, because they'll just run between, GPS, satellite technology, and automated cars. All that, they won't need truck drivers anymore, for example. So it's a big deal. So in reference to what Russian President Putin's talking about, you can go to ALUX on YouTube and watch like the 15 jobs in the future, or the trends on artificial intelligence and things like that. It's a very important thing. But the number one best source of information on how the future is going to work is Billy Edward Albert Meier, FIGU, F-I-G-U, out of Switzerland. So threats to U.S. national security. Paula Dubrowski presenting 23rd Berkeley Lecture Series, International Relations Council, Kansas City, Missouri, IRCKC, Grand Street Cafe. What my question was, posted to Facebook after. What is the United States doing? Do they have a government agency devoted to threats, potential threats from artificial intelligence, the applications, use, misuse of artificial intelligence globally. Does the United States government have a global agency that is monitoring that? That's it. Because you go back to the source I just talked about, Billy Edward Albert Meier, you go back to the Enoch prophecies. Overall, that is threat in the long term, number one. And in the short term, what are the senators asking big tech about? What if they have a lot of more technology they're just not openly questioning about, they're not openly acknowledging, or maybe our U.S. senators simply don't know about or think enough about. Maybe there's some applications with artificial intelligence and the whole system, how it's working, that they're not even aware of yet. They think they might, but they may not. So in any case, relevant topic, and how that's going to shape and change both the immediate time and in the longer term sense, in the longer range future. Artificial intelligence, its misuse, its use, robotics, all this stuff. Technology in general. I think there's a Facebook friend, Michael Petrovich, who talked about basically the misuse of technology. You could say that. I'm going to call it that. He may not have stated it like that, but he may have. But it's the idea that, again, it goes back, for me, it goes back to what Billy Edward Albert Meier taught, which is, do we have the spiritual evolution and maturity to handle the new and developing technology without being evil to each other to the extent of destroying ourselves on our planet, basically, which becomes a concern of extraterrestrial races of human beings, or extraterrestrial races of space traveling folk, that if it's a threat that we will come to destroy our own planet, it may become a threat within the galaxy itself, which may involve, and which in the same material by Billy Edward Albert Meier, would involve extraterrestrial forces that would actually take sides in the situation if it was a, let's say, of the entire planet through, let's say, nuclear war is one example, to where they may side with another side against the West or against the United States, for example. Well, we got some big-headed generals over there. We got some big-headed multinational corporate, like Illuminati, whatever, big money, whatever you want to call it. You got some folks that are power in power, or power behind the power, however you want to see that, call that, but the reality. They don't always think straight, do they? You think you're masters of the world, you think you're masters of everything? Yeah, go hang out with Billy and Swift. You don't have to do that. Just read a book. Just study the case. Just know and understand. We're going to talk about threats to U.S. national security. Think about that. What if he had that happen? This is the old Armageddon scenario, right? Armageddon, the movie. You got extraterrestrial races come down here and like, we're going to whoop some ass. Oh, really? It's like Superman, right? Kryptonite and all this. You got Superman. Anybody has seen the Superman movie, right? Superman, he's like doing his Superman thing. He's being the hero and all this stuff. Everything's going down, the way it goes down. But then you got these other off-world folks that show up and they just, woo, problem, right? Big problem for the whole humankind. Can Superman pull it off? Or will the forces of evil that come from some other world that's doing things ain't nobody understand or seen before, what's going to go on with that? Well, you see, you either believe and understand and know the truth of the Meier story, or you don't. And I'm not pretending that I do, and all this. But I've studied it for a little while, and I've been over there, and I've met Billy twice. It's not even about Billy so much as it's about, there's a whole story there. It's kind of like me. It's a whole story. But me, throw it over here. We're talking about something. We got big-headed people in power, or power behind the power. They think they got it all covered. They got it, everything. Take the Superman story as a real-life thing. If you understand the Meier case, you got these guys that think they're masters of the universe. They can do anything, do everything. They're the gods walking the earth. You come around and study up and understand that it comes to a certain point to where if we, a Western people, think we can just do this to the Eastern people, for example, and I think this is the specific example used in the Billy Edward Albert Meier case. The warning is that these people that remain hidden, these people that space travelers that have capabilities that we can't even comprehend, capabilities, and that includes capabilities to with weapons and speeds of travel that, try time travel and everything else, hyperspace and interdimensional and everything else. And they come in, and the warning's there. It's in the Meier case. The warning is that if we get to the point to where they're going to continue to do that, and it even gets to the point where it becomes a threat to destroy our world because it'll threaten their worlds, they may come out and get involved, and then they'll be up against the West. What does the West think they can take on? Just all the universe? Like, what's going on with that? I mean, it's a big question, right? It's a big question. But if you read that, if you study that, it'll sober you up in terms of the arrogance that we see for those that are thinking people. And apparently we don't have enough people that are thinking people, do we? Anyway, I'm not saying I'm always that way myself, but it's an interesting story nonetheless, isn't it? For those of you that understand the validity and the authenticity of some of the topics that I've just pointed out, unrelated to me per se, other than I've gone my way there and along my way around the world, and I've checked these things out. Some of these things, like stopping in Switzerland, like more than once, like spending a little bit of time there with Billy, 3 days, 5 days, volunteer service work, working in the basement, sweeping outside, snapping beans in the kitchen, burning brush, gathering brush, working in the forest, cleaning the forest, doing environmental work, all this stuff. It's seeing the publications, translations worked on, everybody gathered in the kitchen, and they work it out, they work it on translation. I see people come in, pile in at like 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock, they work. Hardest working people I've ever seen are Switzerland, outside of America, my family. Most people full of light. There was a small group of us, this may be 4 or 5 of us, and one girl from Austria was talking about they had just been in travel over in, she'd been to Switzerland's FIGU a couple times. She's Austrian girl. Her parents were there, they'd always bring her in, bring their family to FIGU. But they had been traveling in Southeast Asia, I believe it was, and they thought they were going to die at sea. Sea got really choppy, kind of stormy, and the boat got all wild, and they thought that might be it for them. But she just didn't have any fear of death because she really understood the spiritual teachings, and her family they all studied the Billy's the spiritual teachings, the introduction to spiritual teachings, the teaching of the spirit, the teaching of the creation, and teaching of life. These are the people that had. It was like looking at people. They had like a radiance. I don't know how to say it. Like there was a calm, light in these people. It's like I'd never seen anything like that before. But they were just people like me. Maybe not like me. Maybe they'd been around it longer. Maybe they had, but whatever it was, they were there, and there was about 4 or 5 of them. We're having this conversation, and it was a calm. It's like they were the calm in the middle of a storm. Literally. On a spiritual level, on a human level, very human, very down to earth. Very down to earth. But full of light. It was just like, and it wasn't weird, it wasn't like new agey or anything like that. It was just like, they didn't have fear, they were calm, they understood that in life is death, and in death is life eventually. And that's the cycle of life, that's the dance of life into eternity. But it's like the evolution of the spirit. Life and death, reincarnation is the reality. So she just didn't have any fear after she tuned into what she'd been taught about it, which is very different than probably 99.9% of anything on the planet. Actually, quite very, very different. So she was just like a calm, radiant light. You could just see this light, this intercom. And there was a Swiss guy there too, who's an engineer, Swiss engineer. Young, good-looking guy, Swiss engineer. I think a woman from Hungary. She knew about Bidzina Ivanishvili. She asked about him. She knew about Georgia. In fact, she said Bidzina Ivanishvili is one of the wealthiest men in the world, because even though he's like this much on the Forbes list, everybody knows and understands he's probably got way, way more money than that, and he's probably considered one of the wealthiest people on the planet. This is how she said it. Well, I don't know about that. True story. Not making this up. Like, well, you know who that is. Well, right now I'm just like, I could 30 seconds walk this way, turn, and there's the Glassel. Glassel is made of glass and steel, and it's Bidzina Ivanishvili's compound, his house, whatever. It's huge, but it's made out of glass and steel. It's just right there. So that was interesting, and but the calmness, the no fear of death or what would happen, and in this storm, at sea, where they had been just before they come back into Switzerland, and they would go back on over to their home in Australia. Austria. Austria. Arnold Schwarzenegger, let's talk about Terminator. Let's talk about Austria. No. First time I got on a flight to fly overseas with Austrian Airlines, and I used Vedic astrologer Pandapar size timing to take that first flight. So it's also pretty cool because we basically flew past into the morning. We caught the sun. So when they play that song by Enigma, Following the Sun, love it, because that's what happened. I took Pandapar size, best date within like a 3 or 4 month window. I said, give me the best date to fly, and he chose some dates, and I took the best date, and I booked a flight, and I flew from the night into the morning, basically kind of going back in time, and going past not only the moon, but this ended up going past the sun, and it was Austrian Airlines. They're like, what the hell? This is freaking weird, man. What the hell? All these stewardesses, everybody that's working on the Austrian Airlines, and everybody that's going, they all look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. How is that? I didn't know it was possible. There's a certain look that Austrian people have, and I'm like, wait a second. It's like, I want to go up and ask this part, like, I grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger in several different movies, and he's the governor of California for a while, and he started out in bodybuilding. He's really crazy about it, and he developed his other talents and other things. He can apply the discipline and the strength and the lessons learned from that to anything in life, right? And how he had vividly seen and knew what his goals were in doing that and why he did it and got to where he got, and that was a large part of his one of his vehicles or his techniques in getting there. Part of it. It's part of his journey, part of his growth. Was bodybuilding. But anyway, I loved his movies. Terminator 2, talking about the threat of artificial intelligence, one of the biggest ones to humankind, to humanity, North America at least. Russian President Putin just talked about it. Like I said, how they're going to use it, keep on top of it. My question was, again, on the 23rd year Berkeley lecture, IRCKC, Paula Dubrowski presenting on the topic, threats to U.S. national security. Does the United States have a global agency set up to monitor that worldwide? The possible misuses or threats from artificial intelligence, its applications, and so on. That was my question after seeing the lecture. First time at the IRCKC, I sit down at the table. Australian Cisco Systems guy sat here, because I started my YouTube channel. First video was with Flip Video. And I think actually Yulia took that video. I was on the couch with my brothers, and I talked about the Silent Revolution of Truth documentary film. And in the country of Georgia, we had just there's a book called "And Still They Fly," page 266 and 267. Absolutely had everything to do with these former Eastern Bloc countries and the threat of world war from that. Illegal and unethical involvement from Western nations' intelligence agencies and secret services, by the way. Page 266, 267, And Still They Fly, Guido Moosbrugger. I got that book here in 2005, I think, maybe 2006, or probably 2005, and I was on the bus with Yulia. We got that book, and it was such an amazing book, And Still They Fly. Oh my God! It had all kinds of mind-blowing information in it. And I would later meet the author of that book outside of a Salome peace meditation there at what looks like a barn, like upstairs of a barn, there at FIGU. And everybody was in there, and all these little special wooden seats, stools almost, but like seats which save on the knees and all that stuff, and about a 20-minute Salome peace meditation. And outside of that, after on one night, it was a Saturday night, and it was dark then, there was a telemeter disc going overhead. That's I think maybe it was Patrick Chanot, who was playing chess with Billy Meier in their time there in the kitchen at FIGU, or the Silver Star Semyazi Center. And then also, Guido was right there. I got to meet and speak with Guido when he was still alive. But it's pretty cool. It's different, but yeah, they said that's probably a telemeter disc, because the way that was coming over, but it's straight line but very slow. It's monitoring. It's a monitoring disc, UFO. So anyway, back to the IRCKC. I'm at that table. To my left is the guy with Cisco Systems, which made the flip video that my brother introduced me to that device. And then over to my right was a woman that said she's with the U.S. She works for the U.S. government. I said, well, which agency? She says, global governance or something like that. And there was another man that came over, sat down, the same thing. And then there was a professor who had spent 8 months in Australia, and he had just retired, professor at UMKC. And then there was one of the directors or guys on the board. They came and sat down. So anyway, at one point they said, everybody that's on the board of the IRCKC, please stand up. And everybody at my table stood up. They were on the board of the IRCKC. Everybody at my table stood up. And I was like, reminds me of Matilda Gavrigliani's supermodel when she stands up in the red Valentino clip where she's on the phone, and then she's in a blue dress and she stands up and then she steps down. Reminds me of Dead Poets Society with the actor Robin Williams, but he's the teacher at the Dead Poets Society's film. It's his characters. He's a teacher, professor at a college, Dead Poets Society, and it's his last time at the college. He's been kicked out. He's been terminated. He's done. He's finished. He didn't think like the rest of them. He's like my accident lawyer, right? Accident lawyer, Michael G. Fattal. We don't think like you. That's how he said to me. But he did a great job on my accident case, car accident case. But he said that. He's a 40 years trial experience lawyer, and we were preparing a lawsuit. We were going to sue to win, and I took all his advice, and but it was, very conservative Midwest, like George is very, very conservative. So the very conservative Midwest, and the Bible Belt of the United States, right? And he said to me, though, he said, we don't think like you. Well, I took a personality disorder test too. It's one used by U.S. government agencies and Fortune 500 companies, talking about Forbes list, right? This guy over here bids in about a shilling. He's on the Forbes list of billionaires, right? So I test into a personality that only maybe 1 or 2, I think it's only 1% of the population may have. So it's the personality of a Rhodes Scholar, like researcher, Rhodes Scholar. It tests me into, like, I'd be good at the architect, or like a field marshal. That's like a level of being some kind of sort of a certain level of a general in military or something. Field marshal. Or a creative person, like creative designer or something, this and that. Actually, Chinese American astrology as an Aries dog or a Scorpion dog. One of those, according to the astrology of Suzanne White, on Chinese American, Western Chinese astrology mix, Aries dog, Scorpion dog, being a filmmaker would be the great job for me. But I just need to make money doing it. That's a problem. But you can't trust Google and Facebook because they're all coordinating their content. Moderators are coordinating who gets censored, who gets limited distribution, who gets deplatformed, apparently according to the line of questioning that happened between Senator Hawley and Mark Zuckerberg, something like that. Anyway, but back to the Dead Poets Society. At one point, Robin Williams stands up. Oh no, the students stand up. The students stand up. Robin's leaving the class. Basically, the rector of the university is like, Mr. Keating! Mr. Keating! Leave! So Robin Williams is the actor's name, the professor in Dead Poets Society, the main. He's picking up his his briefcase. You know, he's picked up his stuff his last time. And someone just says, Mr. Keating, I didn't, because he says like, Charlie, I know you didn't do it, or something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to recreate the whole goddamn scene, all right? But anyway, everybody then stands up on their desk. And he turns, and that's it. Because that's just, you have to watch the movie. I'm not going to say anything else. I'll say this. I love my world travels. Oh my God, I could talk about this for hours. Oh my God, I'm in Rome. Oh my God, I loved it. I said so many great experiences. Speaking about Red Valentino, right? That's Matilda Gavrigliani is the cover image, like 5, 6, 8 photos or something like that of the YouTube channel Red Valentino. Red Valentino. It's a clothing fashion line out of Italy, I think. It's got international. They got stores online all over the world. And anyway, Red Valentino. So that's the part where she stands up on this deck. So I'm just reminded of that for some reason. Captain, oh Captain, my Captain. So when I was in Rome, and this has everything to do with the Dead Poets Society, so don't think I'm lost here. Although I got lost once in Rome on a tour. Lovely, 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 lovely. I was at the Vatican Museum, and they had this headset, right? And this little pack. I paid like, I don't know, $15, $20 for it. It was absolutely worth it. It's like a 4 or 5 hour tour of the Vatican. And I got my camera out there. It's an older cyber shot. I think one before this one that I've got now, which is like even before that. Man, it's pretty old. So, but for back then, God, we're talking like 7, 8 years ago, right? But I'm just loving this because I'm just looking at the architecture, the lawns. There's different groups. There's like 8 or 9 people, and this guy, these little talkies. You put the headset on, he's like talking, and you're hearing him explain the history and what this is and what this is, and the history of this and that. And I'm so like, I felt like Yulia. Yulia couldn't drive. Ukrainian, Russian Yulia that I brought to America as my wife. We were only there for like 6 months. Things happen. Anyway, she couldn't drive because she'd always be curious, looking off this way, looking off this way. So they're like, no. Driving instructor in Marshall, Missouri, like, no. You gotta go back, practice for a while, come back, we'll retest. Then she got her driver's test. But she'd be so goddamn curious. She'd like look over here, and the person in the driver's like, hey, pay attention to the road. But hey, she's brand new into America. Come on, I didn't wait around, right? Didn't F around, let's say. Yulia, you need to get your driver's license. You're living here. You can't go get on a metro or be like, Russian taxi, like put your arm out. And like later we had a big problem because sometimes you don't like the person you're with, or you get into a little whatever and you're in and you just jump out of the car in Ukraine. That it's not unusual for them. They get weirded out. They're like, we're gonna jump. But same thing with taxi. You just put your arm out, you go. That's it. Somebody pull over, pay, go. You agree on a price, go. That's it, Russian taxi. I'm talking about Ukraine, but same thing. Not same thing, but same on the context, the term, the practice, Russian taxi. So, but she was too freaking curious. She looked at her, so I'm like that, but I've got my camera though, see. And I'm so jealous because they got all the 90% of the world's Kabbalistic magic, Kabbalistic esoteric text in the basement. I think they moved everything, the underground library. I think they moved everything. I'm not sure because they got like a big vis-a-vis whatever volcano thing going on there that could blow anytime. And when that happens, we're all in deep caca doo-doo. I'm not talking about the mayor of Tbilisi. I'm talking about caca, like big shh. When that thing goes off, and that could affect the world library that the Catholics have taken from other societies and through wars and conquest and hidden and suppressed in that library somewhere deep below the Vatican. But I think it's been moved. Anyway, as a magician, as an occultist, I'm like, God damn it, I want to get into the basement. I want to see what they took from the Mayans and from all these other cultures and the Egyptian stuff. I saw the Egyptian stuff, some of it's on display, like some mummy cases or something, some stuff from the, stuff they took from Egypt or whatever and all this stuff. So, but here I am, and I got this headset, and I'm taking pictures of this, I'm thinking about that, and my tour people that I were supposed to, they were gone. I felt like Yulia trying to learn to drive, right? I'm like, oh. And and here's the crazy thing. This is even more crazy. I got the headset, right? And I'm taking photos, and I'm looking over here, I'm looking over there. So I'm so curious. I'm so like I'm a child in the world for the first time. I was like, wow, I just love this stuff. And lost track of time. It's like being next to someone that you love deeply. You can just get lost in time. You're gone. It's like, whoa, time travel. Like, what happened? An hour just passed. We're together. It's not. But you're with someone that you love, and you lose track of time. It's all gone. It's the same. I was in love at the Vatican Museum tour. 4 or 5 hours. I'm like, so let me get back to the point. The headset, that tour guide with that tour group, they went way the hell up. They're gone. They're 45 minutes ahead of me at that point. No bullshit. So my headset is hearing this other group, and I'm like following them, but that's not my group. And I don't know why it mattered. Maybe it really didn't matter. Maybe it was something that happened at some point. Maybe it's just like, maybe it mattered to him. I don't know. It was a he that was leading this group. And so at that point I told him, I was like, something like I wasn't with his group. Maybe it was like a different group from a different company, but they use the same like headsets. I don't know, but he was a little bit short with me. A little bit impatient. Imagine that. And he's like, no, you're not, you have to go like, and I'm like, oh shit, I lost my group, right? So I grabbed security, and they were really cool, very cool. In fact, I think it was a woman. It was security, like police. And she went with me, and we kind of ran together. I'm not lying. We ran together like way the hell up. Like I'm not, at least 45 minutes to get caught up. I was that caught up with taking photos and looking at the art and the architecture and all this stuff. And so we run up there together, literally at some points ran. We're running through the Vatican art tour, and so finally I caught up with my original group, and finally we're seeing all this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful art. Just amazing. There's the Christ is the Zodiac thing, the whole Christ story, depiction of Christ. You go to Msketa, 2nd century cathedral here in Georgia. 2nd century, the first original capital city of Georgia. You go in there in the main cathedral church, and I've got this on film. I've got this published on YouTube, and I took a tour there from a elderly Georgian woman, paid her like, I don't know, 15, 20 lari, and she gave us a tour, and it's one of the videos that I narrate. I actually speak as the video is going to the church, and this photo slideshows through the church. I'm actually speaking, telling you the story. And there are two main things that I have studied that Christ is in a painting with in that church. One, the crucifixion of Christ with 3 flight machines, UFOs, flight machines. This is one. The second, Christ in the Zodiac. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Scorpio, Libra. I'm going to go back to Libra. Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Pisces, Aries, Taurus. Round and round and round. So there it is. There's Christ, and there's the same thing in the Vatican. You'll see it up on the ceiling. In some of the art. It's just amazing art. Sculptures, art, just... So, but we got to the end. We got to the Sistine Chapel. I was a little bit disappointed. There's nothing to do. It's just bad luck, I guess. The Pope had decided to come by and speak. Big change in plan. Here I am at the Vatican, everything changed. That happened a lot here in Georgia. For example, the Ministry of Defense, the first American press to film in history of the Georgia Ministry of Defense, NATO Military Committee, first time also in history meeting with the Georgian Armed Chiefs of Staff, first time American press in the building, and Irakli Al-Hassani, then Georgian Minister of Defense, made sure to use that as an opportunity to show Georgia's democratic progress. And it was all authentic. Everything about it was real. It was all genuine. Absolutely, 100%. And when I walked out that day, that's how they put their hand on the heart, the guards. Matters of the heart. Page of Cups, Tarot, for example. Matters of the heart. But because the Pope was coming, suddenly, no one expected it, suddenly they're rushing us through the Sistine Chapel. And I'm like, shit. I didn't get to, we had to literally, we were rushed through the Sistine Chapel. What the hell, man? I mean, I understand, really. I'm not angry about it. I'm just, sometimes that's the luck of life. I mean, on the other hand, the Pope guy was showing up, but the bad downside to that whole thing is that, and I can't remember, I think it's this new guy considered a bit more liberal. When I used to talk to my Catholic friend, we stopped speaking because he would look at something, and he's pretty much this other side of the political thing in the U.S., and I'm like, if you're not even going to look at this thing, how can we even talk? Because you're looking at your stuff, and you're all about just that, but you won't look at this over here. Anyway, I stopped speaking to him. But we were friends for life. But anyway, so I thought, right? So there's the Pope, but I'm just like, you know what? I'm just too tired after 4 or 5 hours of walking through the Vatican tour that I just took. I'm just too tired to stick around and listen to this. So I left. But I could have stayed there and filmed and watched it. But one more interesting thing. There's like part of this, it's like one of the first early Christian churches in all of Europe or something is another part of this tour or this thing. And I kept having this impression that I'm going to run into a guy. Wouldn't it be so funny if I run into the Satanists here, with the big upside down pentagram? And I kept thinking that. And I'm thinking, like, what is this? Like, what? Sometimes you wonder, like, why the hell do I think what I think? But when you're psychic, when you've developed your intuitive ability or your psychic ability like this, and I've done that, sometimes it can be that. And that's what it was. Because I'm up there, and here it is, one of the first or earliest something or biggest something, some specific designation to why this was so special, this Christian church part of the tour, or other part of this area that I went to. And I go in there, and there's this guy with like a hoodie and his girlfriend, and he's got the upside down, pentagram, like the satanic pentagram on his, and I'm like, yo, I just knew that was going to happen. I thought, what if I see that? What if it happens? So I took a photo, and in my slideshow of that, there is this guy with the upside down pentagram. I'm like, oh my God, it's so funny. But you're so free in the West and Western Europe that you can do stuff like that, no problem. No one's going to think twice about it too much, really. I mean, you've got your freedom of religion. So that was an interesting part of the tour as well. But at the end, I just, no disrespect to the Pope, not that I'm afraid to do that, but I'm just like, I can't do this. I've been here too long. So when I was with this woman in Marshall, Missouri, she's an older woman. She's with a banking family that's good friends with my family, Wood and Houston Bank. She's 86 years old at this point. This is some years ago. And she's got her walker. And I'm in her house, and we're doing something. I can't remember. I was there for some reason. And I think she wanted to show me a couple photos or something of her and her friend that when they were 21 years old, they had traveled to Europe. And it was the biggest adventure of their life. And here she is. She's 86 years old. She's got a walker. And she's taking me through. She's the banking family. Wood and Houston Bank's wealthy. But it's in a normal kind of older part of the town where there's actually some kind of mansion-looking like houses there and stuff. But anyway, I'm in her, and she just wants to show me this stuff. And she's telling me this story, this great grand tour that they took. And maybe I don't know if it was a month, 3-4 months they spent in Western Europe. And she's telling me about the art and this and that, and I'm like, yes. I said, I know, I was there, and I loved it, and it was just the time of a life. It was so fantastic, and it was just, we could really relate to one another. It's like these older women that I ran into. Two more. One was Mr. Swisher's wife, Catherine Ann, my father's wife's mother, who passed away. Before she passed away, she couldn't speak. She was unable to speak. She lost her ability to speak. So, but I saw her. She was also in a wheelchair, and I could see it in her eyes. You know, like she was a teacher. You know, so she wanted to know. She had a curious mind. She wanted to know. She wanted to understand. She wanted to communicate. She could not. But everything in her eyes, you could see. You could get that communication. There's still this ability. Call it telepathic. Call it human. Call it nonverbal communications, whatever it is. Call it energetic, which I believe in all of these things. I don't believe I know. And there's this, she's unable to speak, she's unable to move, she's in a wheelchair. But, you know, it's just like I could just tell, it's like, wow, you're back. I'm sure you got, like, you've seen so much, you've learned so much, you've seen things and been places that most of us will never. But she's a teacher, and I knew she was all curious about it. And there was one other woman like this, though, but she could speak. And we talked. And she was 93 years old. It was on the porch of Highland Home for Senior. I could talk about everything now because all that stuff is gone. All the businesses are gone with that stuff. And so she was 93 years old, and she had been in Rwanda. And she called Rwanda in kind of like northern Africa. Rwanda, she said, was like the Switzerland of Africa. Because I come and I sat down next to her on the porch there at Highland Home for Seniors in Marshall, Missouri on I think it's, Highland Home is just right off of College Street. So I'm sitting with her on the front porch, and her eyes are bright, but she's 93 years old. Everything out here is, you know, like wrinkles, white hair, and she's older, you know. But her eyes are like as like the purity of the blue sea or the bright sun in the sky, bright, beautiful blue sky. There wasn't one thing wrong with her mind, and she said, Rwanda was considered the Switzerland of Africa, little Switzerland. And she goes, I was never able to have a child. I think she said she got married when she was 40. And she was a nurse. She was a midwife specifically. She helped deliver children for the African people. And in Rwanda. And one time she remembered delivering out in the middle of the road. She just had to do it. There was no way around it. There was just no way to put it off. It was just going to happen. And so she actually delivered a baby, helped as a midwife, as a nurse, there in the middle of the road in the Rwanda. Because when she was 40, she never had a child. And I think, and I understood, what happened was that she said she then devoted the rest of her life to this mission, to this work. So from age 40 until 65, she worked in Rwanda delivering children. And one of her greatest accomplishments, she said, was they finally got a hospital established there and up to standards to where it was devoted to pediatrics, delivery of children. And she was a very, very adherent, strongly involved in the church. And that was part of her mission. And it's an odd story. As an astrologer, as a psychic person, I would talk about predicting death. I was very worried about death in that exact time. And I double predicted on this with Nana. Nana's mother or grandmother, one or the other, died in that time. And I said, well, that's one death. I said, but there's another one coming. And I said, this one has to do directly with my sphere of it's on my life. It's another, because I had already kind of told her that without directly, indicating exact. So, but I even talked about this on video from Highland Home from Seniors on the porch. Now, family gets very scared because back then they understood that I am very accurate with predictions on, extremely accurate with predictions on death, to the point when I come in the living room passing a mutual friend at my brother's house. Actually, it's a guy I had to punch twice with Taekwondo twisting punches, and this cut his eyes open and he was bleeding. He had come at my brother with 2 beer bottles. I'll use the magnesium oil, the bottle that I use to hold that I make. And anyway, he took the beer bottles and had them upside down, and all the beer was coming out. And then he took a step toward my brother, like he was gonna, like with, right? So I stepped in front of him, and I just Taekwondo punches, snap, snap, twist. Twisting Taekwondo punches. Literally cut his eyes open. Now, those of you who watch me closely, you can see Larry Crawford. Larry Crawford was there. Larry Crawford saw this. My brother saw this. One or both. JT, his brother Timothy, one of those guys or both might have been there. I don't know if Gino was there or not. I'm not sure. But anyway, I cut his eyes open with those punches. Not his eyes, but right underneath. They're bleeding. Really. Those guys were all friends, neighborhood friends, friends. They were very close with my brother. They spent much time with my brother. We're all friends, though. But they broke it up. I attack first. And it's not the only time. Defensive loved one. Cut his eyes open. Taekwondo Shoin-ryu style. Okinawa Shoin-ryu style. Blood. Tears of blood. Not tears, but cut him open. It's a wild, wicked sight. You ought to see it. It happens. Well, so what does that have to do with death? That same guy, Casper. It's not his real name, but let's keep it at Casper. Locals will know who is Casper. The rest of the world won't, probably. I'm walking through the room, and that guy, this is a separate time, separate situation, long after that, actually, I think. Walking through the living room at my brother's house before where he's at now. And he called me Dr. Death. Why? Because so many times I would predict death down to the day or 3 or 4 day or down to the week accurate. One or the other. So many times. That's why when I was with my friend at a restaurant here that serves Iranian food and Georgian cuisine and all this stuff, popular central tourist area restaurant, Arabic style or more Persian style actually. That's why when I told her a negative prediction once, tears. Because when I would speak this prediction, she knew. The chances are extremely high it would be so. So he called me Dr. Death. So I had predicted on the video on YouTube, death was coming. Death was near. Family's a little bit nervous. They didn't want to give it any credence. They didn't want to think about it. They didn't want to hear about it. They're a little bit nervous. because they knew, just like Casper knew. Dr. Death. So, but I did it because I had to learn this, because I went through a very, very bad experience in life after being in the business. And very bad experience. Super, super bad experience in life. And so I had to learn to look ahead. I had to. It's part of my trying to get over the situation. I had to learn how to look, how to see. Because all of a sudden you're going along in life and all of a sudden, whoosh, hell on earth. So I learned to see, all right. I learned to look ahead using astrology and intuition. And I had predicted that there was a death coming. Now, there was a situation with a certain family member, extended family member, and they actually had talked in a way that was suicidal. And because I thought, well, that could be part of this prediction, and it could have. It really could have. And there was some kind of behavior that was kind of close to that too. And so basically, I got with a certain family, and they got together, and they had him committed to a hospital, and he came out and he was completely different. I think he got another 2 years of life out of that before he passed away, which was exactly on the end of a Uranus opposition to Earth transit that I had, which means kind of a sudden unexpected thing in a negative sense would happen, and it was his death. And I attended that funeral with my brother. But I think his life was extended a couple of years because of the foreknowledge about that, because it could have been his death that was in this time of a death occurring. So we were I attempt to change the future, alter the future. And I believe we did. I know we did. We did. And we've done that before. We've altered the future. We've changed the future. So in another sense, if you want to see more about altering the future and how that's of interest to Department of Defense, or a former 2 times both youngest, oldest Secretary of Defense of the United States, Donald Rumsfeld, type in YouTube Vanderpool, Donald Rumsfeld, known, unknowns, or something like that. You'll see an ocean with a missile from a submarine, and you'll hear the excerpt that I cut and put into that little clip from the documentary film on Donald Rumsfeld. Remember, I had flown into Baku, then to Tbilisi, originally obviously from Britain. I was on the jet with only 30 people. It was Donald Rumsfeld up front. He came back at one point, was 3 feet in front of me, talking to his daughters to my left, which I'd only find out later that those were his daughters, and his son behind me. Again, they're all in his book, Known Unknowns, Donald Rumsfeld. And that clip that I've put on his documentary film that's up on YouTube, you will see him talk about, wouldn't it be nice, or great, or wonderful, or whatever, if you could see into the future and then, change something, change the outcome, or whatever. Well, that's kind of what I've done. So what we did with that situation, though, is I was preparing myself to handle it and be stronger for everybody else. Be more calm. So the woman that was a nurse, 93 years old, had helped develop the hospital in Rwanda. She couldn't have children, so at the age of 40, when she figured out she couldn't have children in this, she went and worked as a midwife and delivered babies in Africa. Basically, it was from age 40 to 65 until she retired. She's a very strong member of a church, might have been Presbyterian, I can't remember, there in, I believe, Marshall, Missouri. And so she had this wonderful story, and I had many stories, and she was so, it's like, this is exciting. We can understand each other. You travel the world. I traveled. I lived outside America. There was things in common that people like, in that we can understand each other and have a language and experience and understanding that no one else that hasn't done that, they're not going to understand. They're just in a whole other world. And we can't meet in that special place. We can't meet on that level of understanding. But when world travelers or expats or tour, this type of people get together, man, it's like, oh, you're from this world, and I've been there, and we can talk about that, this experience. It doesn't have to be the same country or the same stuff. It's just the fact that you've had this expat experience, And so, but she's at the table. There's like 9 or 12 elderly people there, and I got my mom and Terry are out somewhere, and they're doing business, they're shopping or doing this or that. I got one of our young staffers is in there. She's like 25 years old at the time, and she's cooking and she's preparing to, she distributed the meds, and she's, had been cooking, and the people are eating, and I'm back on the computer working on some stuff in the office, and all of a sudden this woman, and I hear our staff girls in there, and she's like, Mrs. and she's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And she's, she can't move anymore. She had a stroke. The only thing she could move was her finger. She can't move. She had a stroke. Now there's 9 people at least at the table eating. She can't move her eyes. She can only move her finger. And my 25 years old, emotionally sensitive, farming family, they raise hogs. Big hog operation, but she's working for nursing with our home, and she's about ready to, so I come in and I see what's going on, and I remember my prediction on death. And I've been around this stuff for a long time, off and on anyway. The family's been in the nursing care business over 30 years. I handled it direct for 5. So I'm going to be strong now and calm, because I had to learn the hard way again and again and again. It's like getting into a car wreck over and over and over and over and over, and it's a nightmare, and you can't get the nightmare to stop. Okay, listen everyone. Listen, everyone needs to kind of finish up here. We've got some things we're going to have to take care of, and so everybody, let's finish up. Come on, and if you can't, if you want it, I'll take it to your room, but I need to ask everybody to kind of go ahead and finish up here, and everybody please go back to their rooms, because we're going to have to, we're going to do things a little bit different today. So come on, Mrs. So-and-so, come on, Mr. So-and-so, everybody, let's go to the rooms, come on. And I could tell that the girl, who was emotionally weak anyway, was getting ready to flip out. I'm like, no, listen, I said, you're doing a great job. I can't believe how well you handled that. And she did, in that case. And I said, wow, this is really great. But you've never seen anything like that before. And, well, my uncle had a stroke, and he was in Oklahoma, and I saw him his last few years, visited a few times. And I said, and so, of course, we had the hospital, and my mom and Terry were on the way, and the ambulance is going to be, but I think it ended up to be where they actually, Mom and Terry shown up, and so I helped them, we together, after everyone was cleared and back safely in their rooms, then we lift her up together, and we take her out to the truck, 4-door, like, not like truck, but you know what I mean, like. And we put her, we put her in the wheelchair and take her out there, and then we have to all together lift her up and put her in, and then they take her out to the emergency room at Fitzgibbon Hospital. 10 days later, I think it was, she finally actually did pass on. She started to chain stoke, she had the breathing, the death rattle. But I was a little disappointed in this kind of thing, because what should have been a natural death was extended for approximately 10 days. Because what they do is they come on and they put a patch, which stops this natural death process. So they made a lot more money, though. They would have made like a crazy amount of money per day at the skilled care, nursing care, or a hospital, either one. Probably skilled care, nursing care, which is there's one attached to the hospital. They would have kept her alive. They kept her alive for about another 10 days. Because typically when you hear the death rattle, when you go into chain stoking type of breathing, it's a death breathing. And so what they just make more money off that situation. It's like my friend here who asked for the magic when her grandmother, mother, I can't remember which was brain dead already. She'd been in a coma for quite a number of months. Family was there. It's very stressful, very draining because they're always there. But the Georgian law had changed. They can't. So I did this magic because I had this. There was already this evocation I had done, this connection with this Kabbalistic Earthstone angel in the degree of Scorpio, I believe, over medical miracles and medical this and that and the other Kabbalistic. And I knew she couldn't learn this magic in that short amount of time, so I just did it for her. And within that half a day or next day, she had passed on. And it's the same friend that had seen me do Task on Command, this type of occult magic in a different way. 3 different times with her I demonstrated it. With Kate Latsunishvili, I demonstrated the exact same technique 6 different times. 6 different times at Tatsminda Funicular, 4 down below where we filmed Marie, and then 2 times up on the restaurant part, Task on Command, demonstration of actual Kabbalistic magic. There was a funeral. I'm going to go back to the nursing home, and this woman had this stroke. There was a funeral 10 days later, or so, maybe it's 11 or 12, but her family was there, Sweet Springs, Missouri. My brother was the pallbearer, a little bit nervous, but he's handled this stuff, but he's a little bit nervous, he's smoking, and I kind of joked with him, kind of kept it down. The earth that was there for them, was there for the family. Her family had shown up. Same thing, showed support, was there for them. Because I'd known that this is that coming, I had prepared for all this to be a support to everybody else because I could see that that was coming. And I already talked about it before it happened. So I was able to be a support for the family. They ended up coming to our home and staying there because they ended up in a situation where they needed care. And so because they'd handled it so well, and they thanked me and the family, but it also specifically thanked me for handling it so well, they ended up staying at my mother's nursing home for quite a long time from Sweet Springs, Missouri. Well, so I can be Dr. Death. This reminds me of the goddess Terra. I saw goddess Terra in a wall mural on the Club 36 in Amsterdam. There's a painting, and in the next wall mural, like here's a table, like a group could sit, and you could like smoke some European weed or something and hear techno music, and then they'd be playing billiards down a couple steps down. And there was a magic mushroom museum next door to that. And on the wall there, like, is a painting, a mural of the goddess Terra. And what's so freaky, there's this big story about it. I won't go into the whole thing, but because I've seen a lot of things in the future then. I was actually on magic mushrooms then in Amsterdam. 2 different times there. But what's interesting is that the many things. Not the many, but yeah, there's like a handful of things that I'd seen about the future. This is 2005 in the summer. They've actually come to pass since then. I think not everything, but a lot of the things that I was seeing had come to pass. For example, somehow the world has turned into a movie stage. And you know the Enigma song, The Screen Behind the Mirror? Or a typical theater where you got a stage. And behind the curtain, there's the script writers, or the directors, or the lighting people, or the prop people, the other actresses and actors, that kind of thing. Somehow, this was my life. Somehow it became reality. Well, that was before I knew about, or there was maybe a Facebook, or maybe there was so much like with YouTube or things like this, right? And before I ever got involved in an American-Georgian defense-related project, for example, where you find that there's groups of people that are trying to plan your life, some events, months, years in advance. Like, we're going to make this outcome, or we're going to make this script, which later, if you look into the so-called files of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, right? and you see these so-called, like the, what is it, the WikiLeaks cables, whatever, the embassy, U.S. embassy cables leaks in the WikiLeaks and all that stuff. You see where they actually, some U.S. politicians or U.S. State Department people did try to script certain things to play out, certain stories to play out, script certain things to play out, to happen before they happened. And wouldn't that get into where they're like trying to kind of behind the screen, behind the curtain, manage your life to make a story, to make a PR, public relations, to make a certain image, to make a certain outcome? But what if they came to you and said, can you help us with this project? And we're going to, can we use you? But what if you did a magic before that, about half a year to a year before that, commanding exactly what they gave you into manifestation, which actually leads to a greater manifestation years later, which is exactly what you were really after. But both are intertwined like my fingers hand upon hand right now, hand in hand. What if? Then it gets quite amusing, because you're watching and you're watching them come and say, but they can't know, they don't know what your magic was. But you got other people that don't know nothing about nothing about nothing. Oh, they used you, they did this, they did that, it's so sad. It is, it's really sad. It's precisely what I asked for. The result, the end results. Well, if you study Billy Edward Albert Meier, you know some certain predictions, some prophecies about the future, and yeah, you might want a couple things to be in play before you get there. And some of the things I saw in Amsterdam had since come to pass. Screen behind the mirror. Enigma. Screen behind the mirror. People trying to manage your life as if though they're a script writer. It's a play. The people behind the curtain. The people behind the theater. Suddenly, when the curtains come down, but here's what it was. Here's what my vision was in Amsterdam when I was on these magic mushrooms. I only did these magic mushrooms twice. One was a philosopher's stone, which is actually a fungus. Philosopher's stone. The first one was, there was a little Jesus Christ looking guy, literally, except he had this little mustache twirled up like this. And he had like a street cart, and he was selling magic mushrooms there in Amsterdam. And he's like, you could tell I was a noob, right? Absolutely noob. First time ever. And he's got a street cart, and there he's got all these magic mushrooms, in the little Euro-like box and everything. And I said, look, how much for those Mexican magic mushrooms? He's like, €20, 20 grams, straight. And I said, well, how much should I take? It's my first time. I said, well, because like 20 grams, €20 could be like, that's a level 5 trip. That's heavy. That's far. That's about as high as you can go on a trip level, psychic trip. Psychedelic trip, not psychic. Psychedelic. It's a difference. So I'm like, okay, and he smiles like this little devilish smile, like, and his little mustache that goes like this. It's like, almost like my Uncle Tom has a mustache like that sometimes. But this guy looked like a little Jesus Christ, like a 5-foot version. It's like the same kind of Jesus Christ figure guy that I saw in Sedona, Arizona when I was there. And I drove through there, visited there a couple times. One time was with Crystal, former wife. Anyway, this guy was little Jesus Christ, and he had this long staff, wooden staff, and he had a white robe. But he's only like 4'9", swear to God. And he's just walking out in Sedona like a modern day Jesus Christ. He's got a white robe on. He's got his staff in his hand. And I'm like, because you got to understand, Sedona's like the new age capital of the West, and before the pandemic, before the world crisis. They got like 1 million visitors a year, something out there. Well, that's to Las Vegas for sure. Las Vegas is the #1 visited tourist destination in the United States. Las Vegas. Over 1 million people a year domestically will visit from somewhere in the United States to Las Vegas. You know, you can get married in Las Vegas 24 hours, no problem. You show up, you want to marry, you apply for the license, come in the next day, you get married. I did that once in Las Vegas. But in Sedona, Arizona, which is the state next to it, you got all these New Agers. So you got people that can heal with stones and hands-on and massage and psychic and astrologers and people that are sensitive to energy can go out to the red rocks and the ley lines and feel the energy and all this stuff and talk about UFOs or New Age, whatever. It's the capital of the New Age kind of thing. Eureka Springs, Arkansas, northwest Arkansas, it has a little bit of the same thing going on, but it's much, much smaller. Eureka Springs. I had a buddy spend some time there. So this guy was just a little Jesus Christ just walking out there in Sedona. Anyway, back to Amsterdam. That's what the guy looked like without the white, who was selling me this box of Mexican magic mushrooms, and then it's a level 5 psychedelic trip. You know, you're going to get off those kind of magic mushrooms. But yeah, so I ended up at Club 36. I ended up in before that I was looking at the Magic Mushroom Museum. Right, it's a trip. It's like Amsterdam is so unique. It's so unique than any other place on the planet. So, but a lot of those visions that I was seeing about certain things in the future have come to pass. But in Club 36, there was the goddess Tara on the wall, and when you're on the shrooms, it's like all of a sudden she's like moving. She's like, and she's got like 8 hands, right? And she's moving, but there was this very, very deep, watery, emotional, nurturing mother of all mothers, mother goddess, like mother, ultimate mother goddess of all things, connection in this psychedelic experience. What really freaks me out, I won't go into the whole story right now because I'm going to close this live stream. There's some things I got to do at 2 hours and 26 minutes right now. But what I can say is that I had the super doctor Jeff Sutherland, electromedicine research, scalar wave magnetics, radionics, frequency scan, frequency electromedicine, all this stuff. He's a scrum master now still. He's the one that recommended 4-life transfer factor, which is gives the fastest response to build up your immunity, your immune system, which basically transfer factor is isolated in colostrum, which is the precursor to cow's milk. It's what the cows, babies per se, little cows that are just born, that's what they're getting, which gives them such strengthened, faster immunity and immune system response coming into this world, fresh and new, so they can survive and grow and become a big adult cow or whatever. So it's an immune system enhancer, booster, natural one, if you consider milk to be natural, cow's milk. So 4-life, as in the number 4, life transfer factor, is what he recommended. And I participated in his research from a period of like 2000 something, 2001 to something like that, maybe 3 into, for sure 3, into like 2009, and a little beyond that, actually some years beyond that, but that was the heaviest part of it. And so in a corresponding way, layperson kind of way, back and forth, this and that, and I had a couple different frequency devices and some electromedicine devices and stuff like that. And I was getting his consult and participating in his research for all those years. And I'm talking to him from Amsterdam about a couple things, and I thought maybe I picked up a little bit of a cold or something, or maybe it's just a side effect of being on the philosopher's stones or something, because it was a fungus type of thing. It was a little bit different than the shroom thing. And it's like truffles, right? Psychedelic truffles. So I emailed him, and he had emailed me back. I told him about the Goddess Tara experience. It was mind-blowing. It was so real. I mean, it was absolutely real in that psychedelic state. But there she was on the wall, and it was actually a real communion. The whole thing was, I'm not going to talk about the whole trip story right now, although I need to write it up and put it up on the trip stories websites around the world. But Dr. Sutherland had a link about Goddess Tara on his website. It's still there. I checked it the other day. It's still there. Years later, my God, this is 2005. I'm in Amsterdam. And there's the goddess Terra. And then when I traveled over to New Zealand, I took a train from Amsterdam down through Belgium, or through Brussels, down, I think even, I don't know if it's Luxembourg, but down through Switzerland for sure. I remember being on the different track there for a little bit on the platform in Switzerland and seeing some of the teenagers, some of the young people with all different freaky colors of hair and clothes and all that stuff. And talk about psychedelic. Anyway, I got on to another train there and went on down into Italy. And I'd stayed in Italy for about 5 days or so, and then I'd flown out to... I was at a hostel in Rome, and I went to Santa Marinella then and spent some time on the sea then. Several days. I went back and forth by train and spent time in Santa Marinella. But I'd flown out through the United Arab Emirates at one point. I'd spent some time in Dubai, and then I'd flown over. I'd stopped in Thailand and ended up in Australia, ended up in New Zealand. But when I got to New Zealand, I was at the most popular hostel in the country, small country. Maybe there's only 4 million people in New Zealand. It's the most modern it's the newest, youngest of countries, is New Zealand. And English speaking, although they drive backwards from us, they drive on the left side instead of the right side, and the steering wheel's on the other side too, and it's all kind of crazy, so no, I'm not going to try to drive there. I was only there for 45 days. I was in the hostel for 45 days down on the Queen Street of Auckland. And but here's the funniest part of my story. It's not the funny, there's all kinds of stories. There's many, many stories. But I'm there, first night in, there's like 3 women in my hostel, and like there's bunk beds. There's like 2 or 3 bunk beds. There's 2 bunk beds here, there's 2 bunk beds here, there's another bunk beds. So there's like 3 women and me. So I'm there, it's in the most popular hostel in New Zealand. The girl, I tell her about my goddess Terra story, and then Dr. Sutherland's got a whole link on his website devoted, that one page devoted exactly to the goddess Terra, who I had just had this psychedelic interchange, this real communion. I mean, as real as if though she was right there. She started, like this thing, and like 8 arms and shit, and she's like, like, I'm the mother goddess of all. I am as ancient as water itself. And I am the nurturer. I am like the ultimate nurturer, and all this stuff you just went through with, had been separated from Yuli and the situation, and there was some persecution going on and stuff like this, and it's just like, and the experience I had over in the billiards with this was like the whole room turned into like water, and it was like I was in eternity, and I understood I'm an eternal being, nothing, no enemy, even if they got me and slayed me down, it's nothing, because I will go on forever. I'm eternal. And I knew that. I just didn't know it. I knew. I didn't believe it. I didn't think I knew. Somebody didn't teach me that. I knew. It didn't matter. So if they had Ukrainian agents outside, if they had some kind of whatever, didn't matter. Didn't matter. I'm forever. And they can get me in this life. They can even try in the next life. I am forever. I am eternal. And I didn't think it. I didn't believe it. I didn't question it. That's reality. I knew it. And I knew it. I was pure energy. And the whole room was water. And there's billiard players right there. So I'd gone up behind me, like, so much for the enemy thing, and I sat down at this table, and I had a little bit of, I had a Euro joint or something, but then these 3 people came up and they sat down at my table. They're like, can we sit here? And I'm like, okay. So they sat there and they pulled their weed out, and they had just bought up front, and they started to do this rolling and everything, and I'm thinking, well, I know I'm eternal, and I'm thinking, I've been around this stuff before in the United States, from time to time, way back, before I got away from all that stuff or around that stuff, and then I'm like, I know this is Amsterdam, and I know this is all like, cool and everything, and I'm like, I'm too much of an American where it wasn't legal then for sure, in America, and I don't think in anywhere, And I'm just like, I'm too much. I just can't handle this. I'm just not comfortable with like sitting here on the open, like with people I just don't even freaking know that come up and sit down at the table and they start rolling their weed and goddess terrors right there. Like, whoop, now, like, yeah, excuse me, friends, I'm gonna take the next table. So I got up and I went to the next table, and then there was another like, maybe even Chinese-oriented type of like wall mural back there. And anyway, that part of that was over. That pretty much did it for me and brought me out of that thing. But when I'm in New Zealand after this experience, I'm telling this story to the girl there in the hostel who's in the room with me. I didn't know her at all, and she pulls out this tarot deck, and it's the Goddess Terra. It's like 22 cards. It's 22 major arcana. Maybe it's more, because most tarot decks are going to be at least 78 cards, right? Probably that, but I mean, it would at least 22 major arcana, major secrets, right? The major, basically, what is the 22 different major possibilities that happen in a human being's life that can happen? You know, like birth, death, destruction, creation. You know, birth, death, whatever. All these different things that can happen in a life, basically, are in the first 22 cards. The first major secrets, major arcana, major secrets of the Rota, revolution, evolution of life, the evolving soul. Human being through the journey of life. And it happens again and again and again, developing the soul, evolving into eternity. That's the meaning of the symbol of eternity. Kind of an 8 twisted on the side. Anyway, number 8. So she pulls out that deck of Goddess Tarot there in New Zealand. And I'm just like, wow, what's the chances of this? I'm a world traveler. I had this experience, Club 36, Amsterdam, listening to techno music, just come out of the Magic Mushroom Museum, just had like 20 grams of, I don't know if it was the truffles I'd take, this philosopher's stone, or the Mexican mushrooms. I have to go back and try to remember which day that, which. But here I am in New Zealand this much later, and she's showing me this Goddess Tarot deck, Goddess Terra. Mind-blowing. What's the chances, man? Wow. Here's another part of an interesting story. So I'm on the street. I'm on Queen Street in Auckland, and I'm going out to eat or check things out or explore, hang out, do fun, whatever. Maybe go to a pub. Maybe go down to the ocean side. They got these running tracks, walking tracks. They got one part for the people that walk, another part for the people that ride their bike, and they got little light reflectors. It's really, really modern country. Very modern country. It's the youngest of countries. It's one of the most modern, too, in a sense. And English speaking, that was helpful, because they also speak the Maori language. Anyway, so I'm on the street, and there's this guy, and he's trying to kind of got these books. He's talking about, he's one of these street guys that's trying to convert people to Hare Krishna or sell the Hare Krishna books. Yeah, like that cult, like those people. And he's like, here's how he talked to me. He's like, hey, where are you from? I said, I'm from America. Ah, you're from the West. He goes, in the Western spirituality, they do this, and this, and then, but we, in the East, we got a monk will go and sit in the cave, and maybe it's like 3 years, 5 years, meditation for hours in the cave, and the monks, and up in Tibet, and all this and that. And, and then there's a story about Hare Krishna, and he finally gained enlightenment, and he's got these books, and he's trying to interest me in these books and this Hare Krishna spirituality or whatever. And he goes, it's like Western spirituality is so inferior, and that's why they're so behind, and they have these problems in the West, and but we have the masters of the East, and Hare Krishna already spent this time and gained enlightenment in the cave. And I stopped him. I said, look, listen, I said, I know, I'm from America. I said, I know what you're talking about. But I said, listen, I said, I had the same kind of enlightenment you're talking about, but even more, actually. I said, for 20 euro, 20 grams, Mexican mushroom, Amsterdam, and I said, and a Goddess Terra, Goddess Terra, which is Hindu, by the way. It's from India. Mural at Club 36. I said just after I got out of a magic mushroom museum on magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms. I said I just walked out of the museum. I said I heard this heavy, like techno, and I said I'd already taken like 20 grams of Mexican mushrooms fresh. I said I just heard the techno music after I got out of the Magic Mushroom Museum. I said I walk into Club 36. I said I have this amazing experience about how I understood. I knew I had the experience, the enlightenment that I am eternal. They can kill me. I can die. I said I'll come back. It can happen again. I am eternal through eternity. I am eternal energy. And I said I had that experience and that enlightenment, and then I had this deep water element, nurturing assurance from Goddess Terra in a very difficult situation. Very difficult situation. And she was like there for me, and I said, it would totally comfort me, tell me not to worry, everything's to work out. And she's like the water element, she's like the ultimate mother goddess, universal goddess, mother, universal mother. And I said, then my super doctor's got a link to that on his website because he's Buddhist, because he fought in the Vietnam War. He was a Top Gun jet fighter pilot for the U.S. Air Force and was tweaking their computer systems at the same time because he's a genius. And he's a super doctor, medical researcher. And I said, he sent me that link, and I said, it's all about the Goddess Terra. I said, not only that, I said, then I'm at the hostel, and the girl pulls out a tarot deck after I tell her this experience that I have with the Goddess Terra. And she's got the Goddess Terra tarot deck. I said, so I said, I understand everything you just told me. Believe me. All the years in the cave and meditation and all this in the Hare Krishna gained enlightenment. You have these books, and it's going to teach me something. I said, let me make sure that you understand, though. I said, I'm a Western person. And I said, my spirituality is the deepest, most enlightenment of the most nourishing enrichment that I could have ever had in my world travels. For 20 euro and 20 grams fresh Mexican mushroom. And he was just like, the end of conversation, that was it. It's just 20 euro and 20 grams fresh Mexican mushroom, Amsterdam, Netherlands. Legal. And I always knew it was going to happen. But I had hoped it would have happened like with a trip sitter, and I figured somehow it would happen in the United States, and we'd be out in the forest, away from everybody, everything. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't always get what we want when we plan. Sometimes it just happens, and you have to take advantage of things, and it's in a city you've never been in before, first time in your life, in a foreign country, where it is legal, but you don't have a trip sitter, but you had a little Jesus Christ looking guy with a curly mustache and a wicked evil grin when he tells you 20 grams and 20 euro fresh Mexican mushrooms, and the rest of the story I just told. Have a nice day, friends, and yeah, stay spiritual. Stay spiritual, especially if you're from the West. Yeah.